Thank you.
Okay. Well, before I officially call the meeting to order, I just wanted to run through our agenda and also cough for a second, apparently. I'm sorry about that. So tonight we have 4 public hearings. Those will be starting at posted times beginning at 7:30. And so those of you who have seen us in action know that if one public hearing runs into the posted start time of another, we have to pause the one that we're in to open the next one. It's legally posted time, and then we'll recess it so that we can keep going. So there may be a little bit of juggling that goes on. For people who have seen us do that, it won't feel surprising, but if you're here for a public hearing or you're coming to speak at one, you're watching on BevCam, sometimes the times they open and then they may move back a little, so I just don't want people to be surprised if that happens. We do also have a presentation to get us started today, and then we have some regular business to take care of. We will take a break for some committee work and then come back at the end of that to finish everything up. And so with that, we have quite a lot in front of us, so we'll get right to it. Kim is ready in the booth for BevCam. Thank you, Kim. And I will officially call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Monday, March 6, 2023, 7 o'clock p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Owen? Here. Crowley?
Here.
Feldman? Here. Hausman? Rand?
Here.
Rotundo?
Here.
St. Hilaire?
Here.
Sweeney?
Here.
And Flowers.
I'm here. Thank you, Ms. Kent. Councillor Sweeney, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney. I do want to mention before we get right into our presentation that if anyone is here or is watching and is planning on coming to speak in one of our public hearings, there are sign-up sheets on the desk in front of us here, and so you can come up at any point, members of the public, and add your name to the public hearing you're interested in speaking on, and when we get to that, we'll call members of the public in the order that they're signed up. And I'll invite people to do that several times throughout the time, so this is not your last or only chance, but feel free to come up anytime, even as we're talking. Don't let that hold you back. So with that, we'll go right to presentations, and we have Mr. Anthony DeLuzio, project manager from Collier's Engineering and Design Team. And Mr. DeLuzio, thanks for being here. You're here to talk with us a little bit about the City Hall redesign and the McPherson Youth Center redesign.
Yes, thank you for having me. Anthony DeLuzio, representing Collier's project leaders. We've been selected as the city's owner's project manager, or OPM, for these 2 projects, so we have a full complement of staff working on both projects simultaneously. Over the past few months, our first portion of the engagement was to assist the city with designer selection. So we put out a combined RFQ, opening up the opportunity for designers to select and propose on one or both projects to see what kind of benefit we could get out of maybe a single procurement. What became evident was there were 2 very clear types of firms that go after the smaller boutique-ish community center, senior center, youth center type projects, and others that went after the more complicated, as City Hall falls under that, very complicated historic additions and renovation projects. So ultimately, working with the mayor's designated team, Michael Collins, Brian Ailes, David Gelano, and the mayor, the city ultimately selected 2 firms, Feingold Alexander Architects out of Boston for the City Hall project. So that'll be a full historic renovation project of City Hall, dealing with the police station add-on building. They've got a great amount of experience in that, and all of their proposal and historic reference documents are available to you, should you want to see those. With McPherson Youth Center, the firm that was selected is called Abacus Architects. As I said, they're a smaller boutique firm, but very experienced with a high level of experience in community centers, senior centers, youth centers, and similar types of projects. So both of those firms have been engaged now for a couple of months. They're engaged to what we call phase 1 services. And during Phase 1 services, they will meet with the constituents of each project, so Youth Collaborative Board, the Y, the Rec Department, board counselors, and what the mayor has designated as an ad hoc facilities group to help and oversee the design of the McPherson Youth Center. So those engagements have been happening. I think there's been 4 meetings to date talking about what types of programs, what types of spaces, where the building is situated is certainly a complicated little site. It sits on the waterfront. Everybody knows there's flooding issues there. It sits on a contaminated site, so anything that happens over there, while it is a small project, will certainly need to be regulated and cared for appropriately. With City Hall, it's a bigger, larger historic project, as you know. We do fully anticipate that folks will be moving out of City Hall during that renovation. We've completed all but, I think, 2 department interviews where the architects and Colliers, myself and Feingold Alexander, have sat with each department, understanding what the nuances are of how they work, how much staff they have, how much staff they think they're going to need, what types of technology, computer systems, file storage systems, anything that that department is going to need planning for the next 20 years, we've tried to divulge out of the group, and we put that on paper. And so both projects running simultaneously, somewhere end of April, early May, we will have a full program, and that program will define for you spaces, occupancy loads, technical requirements, data, mechanical uses, everything that goes into completing those programs and giving them the efficient and workable spaces that they need. With design and engineering, the city has set a couple of goals, again, for each project. We're working with the city sustainability group. We're planning for net zero. We're planning on designing to LEED standards. And in that process, we will help the city develop what's called owner project requirements. A lot of names and initials in this world. But the OPR, owner project requirement, is a document that will establish for each project the LEED standards, the sustainability standards, the high performance standards, whether it's building envelope, wall insulation, roof insulation, mechanical systems. And really what you want to do is drill down on the energy use intensity, or the energy use intensity, EUI, for each project. And those will be established working with the design teams over the next 3 to 4 months. With that, there's always project budget. We've talked a little bit about schedule, what takes place in this first phase. With McPherson Youth Center, we've kind of established a guideline there of approximately 5,000 square feet. Keeping that project under the $7 million number is a goal of the city. We feel at 5,000 square feet and $7 million, that's substantially much more building than what is there currently, but it should serve the purpose as we see it thus far, based on what we're hearing for program requirements, lounge space, gaming space, art space, study space, recreational space. It's kind of fitting very nicely in those guidelines. The complexities and the cost risks associated with McPherson Youth really surround and evolve more around the site particulars, working on a contaminated site, working within the flood zone, working in the river zone. That site has its complexities that we will need to manage very carefully in order to get the most building that we can and get the most bang for the buck. Nobody likes to spend additional dollars in earthwork that nobody really gets a usable benefit from. But that's the biggest risk over there right now with McPherson Youth. So one, we need to manage the square footage. That will help manage the budget. Secondarily, we need to manage the site in order to manage the budget. And those things should come together, as I said, about April. We'll have a good plan of what can fit, what the site complexities are, where we are to budget and schedule. With Beverly City Hall, We're going through that same process. Again, April, May, both teams are on the same track. The complexity here is you've got an additional building out back, we've got a limited parking area, we're bringing user departments here that have fleet vehicles associated with them. You've got a very tight site to your abutters. We've got a nice park out here that we don't want to disturb, and we know we need to retrofit the parking area and deal with the added-on former police station building. This building project we anticipate will be under $25 million as a goal. It will be net zero. It will be historic in nature. While the inside may change, we know that we're looking at the historic elements on the outside of the building, and we need to respect the architecture and the historic nature, both on the interior and the exterior, but with particular attention paid to the exterior of this facility. As far as, again, risks, cost risks, project impact, again, it's that tight abutters site. We know our boundary lines are very tight. We know we've got parking issues that we need to deal with. We know we're trying to achieve a lot in a small footprint and in a small building footprint, bringing those other departments back. So those are some of the risks that we're chasing down over the next 2 or 3 months. And that really sums up my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luzio. Counselors, are there any questions that you might have, understanding that this won't be the only opportunity that counselors will have to speak with you and your team, particularly about needs at City Hall or needs that you might be thinking about for the council chambers? I know there was interest in hearing from counselors on that. Counselor Rand.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I'm wondering if the Ward 2 Civic Association is on your list of stakeholders to reach out to.
It is not, but it is now.
Excellent. Glad I asked.
Would you give that to me again?
The Ward 2 Civic Association, and I can email you contact information.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor Rand. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Counselor Belton.
Thank you. So it's really great to hear an update and to hear how far along the process already is. And I just wanted to know how some of the feedback that we provided when allocating the funding for the work to begin has been factored in so far, including things like the extent to which young people have been consulted already as part of that stakeholder group. I know it sounds like a meeting with the council about needs for City Hall is planned, but I know that was something
It
that was
is
a
being
priority,
planned.
so. And any of the other
You've gotta
feedback that
have
we
three
provided at that
counselors
time,
at
just
three
how it's
different-
being factored in.
Sorry, in teams of 3, I guess I'll say. And I'm working with Martha to set those up so that there's different people who are on different committees together that, she's trying to help me schedule those meetings so that we don't have posted conflicts of open meeting law. With regard, is that not right?
If I may,
Hoping somebody else can weigh in on
no,
that.
that may well be happening. I think from my perspective, I see no reason not to have that discussion in an open meeting, if that's what it requires to happen quickly and for us to be able to participate in that process. If that's a barrier to scheduling, then from my perspective, I don't see any reason why it can't be an open meeting. But yeah, would love to
Okay.
have that feedback and then just hear how you've already factored in some of the things we shared several months ago.
Great. With regard to the youth center and engaging the youth, we have been working with Councilor Rotondo. There's been a survey, I want to say 560 students,
567.
somewhere thereabouts, that have responded. So that's a terrific amount of respondents at this early stage. So the youth are definitely engaged in that process. The report and the data and the graphs and all that information just came out today, so I can't speak too much to it. I don't know if Councilor Rotondo has gone through it any greater, but we will definitely look at that information and see how that correlates to what we've heard from the Youth Collaborative and the folks that have attended those programming sessions. So they've asked for certain areas and certain room sizes based on what you've been using now, right? How big the lounge area is, how big the arts and crafts is. Well, it could be little, it could be a little bigger. We know pool tables, foosball tables, those things have certain areas around them for free area of movement. What that data may tell us is you've got a pool table there, but it's only used marginally, and they prefer something else. Those two things will now start to come together. And as I said, we're working on meeting with the ad hoc group, which I want to say is about 11 people that are now going to start taking some of that raw data and helping us ferret and vet out what is reasonable and what is maybe wish list versus want list versus what do we need.
Thank you. Please.
One follow-up too. Could you just, I appreciate the update on where the overall project budgets are looking now that you have some sense with the design firms of what it will actually entail. Can you give us an update as well on where we are against the budgets that were already allocated for this design phase?
So you've got budgets that were allocated for each phase. We're well under that. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. The city has only retained the OPM and the designer through phase one. So that early programming concept phase that I've described is not the full design services. What we do in these projects is we oftentimes, as we have here, hire the designer and go through this programming phase as what we term proof of concept. So you have a concept that you want to build a new youth center, or that you want to renovate and add on to the city hall, utilizing the CM at-risk format, and you want it to be net zero in some of these, kind of 30,000-foot goals. We need to take that and prove that that concept fits within the guidelines that you've given us. So right now, we're not committed, the city, on behalf of the city, we're not committed to anywhere near those full extent of dollars. All of that proof of concept will get delivered to the city. We allow generally 3 to 4 weeks so that we know we're covering city council meetings, ward council meetings, separate building committee meetings, so that all of that information, the proof of concept, can be reviewed by those entities with proper feedback coming back to us, time to redesign or implement any changes that you may require. Do we need to get something back in line for budget? Do we need to deal with the contaminated site issue? What do we need to do to make that concept work for you? We hope that coming out of kind of May timeframe is that the city will then have a proof of concept for McPherson, and it might be 4,200 square feet, it might be 5,500 square feet, it might be 6.5 million, it might be 6.8 million, whatever those work out to be. We would be looking at probably a May timeframe to reestablish the city's commitment of those fundable projects so that we can move forward at that time.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions from the council at this point? Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to add to this presentation at this point? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. DeLuzio. Thanks for being here and for giving us a sort of initial presentation on some of where things stand at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There's one report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
How about that?
Oh, thank you.
I can put it, yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, we'll look forward to continued conversation about both of these projects.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Before we jump into the next part of our agenda, there are many people in the room that I just want to acknowledge. His Honor the Mayor is here. You just heard me talk with him, so not a surprise that he's here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here. Our City Finance Director, Brian Ailes, is here with us this evening. Our City Purchasing Agent, David Gelano, is here with us this evening. Our Fire Chief, Peter O'Connor, is here. Thank you, Chief, for being here. Dylan Benson from the Solicitor's Office, and I believe I also have seen the Solicitor, Stephanie Williams, in and out. She's in. I see her behind Councilor Feldman. Thank you, Solicitor. Our Department of Public Services Commissioner, Mike Collins, is here this evening. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Our City Council Budget Analyst, Jerry Perry, is here. Welcome back, Mr. Perry. You were in a warmer climate. Now you're back. And then also we have members of our Veterans Council are here. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And I also see members of our police, Beverly Police and Fire Department. So thank you all for being here with us. And did I miss any city staff? Sometimes people are behind other people. Okay. Well, thank you to everybody for being here, and thank you to members of the public as well who are here or planning to take part in our public hearings. I'll just reiterate again, too, that if there are members of the public wishing to speak in a public hearing or at home watching and you're feeling inspired, you can come and sign up on the sheets in front of us. The first one will begin at 7:30, and you can sign up at any point as we go along to speak in one of the public hearings. So with that, Ms. Kent, actually I lied. We'll go to acceptance of minutes from a previous meeting, and we have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first is from our regular city council meeting on February 21st, 2023, and the second is from our finance and property meeting from February 27th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries 8-0, and we will approve both sets of those minutes. Thank you. And now, Ms. Kent, let's go to communications from His Honor the Mayor, please.
Order number 51, Dear Honorable City Council, the City of Beverly recently opened proposals for a lease transaction to acquire mechanic garage space for the Beverly Public School Transportation Department and the Beverly Fire Department. Because this is a right therein of land, City Council approval is necessary before the lease with the selected proposer, 51 Park Street LLC, is executed. The lease is for 1-year term with 2 one-year renewals with total annual lease payments of $35,376. This space will be utilized to maintain and repair the school buses belonging to the Beverly School Transportation Department and the fire trucks belonging to the fire department. I respectfully request that you approve this execution of the 3-year lease with 51 Park Street LLC for the mechanic garage space lease at your upcoming meeting. Thank you for your consideration. Please feel free to reach out. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 52. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has been awarded a $8,500 grant from the Department of Fish and Game, Division of Marine Fisheries, Clean Vessel Act grant program to support the free seasonal pump-out boat service from Friday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The boat pump-out service provides a safe, convenient, and environmentally responsible way for boaters to properly dispose of sewage. Pump-out services provide the most effective means for emptying, holding tanks, and leads to improved water quality. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval before any grant, earmark, gift, or donation to the city can be expended for their prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant by acting on this matter at your upcoming meeting. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 53, Dear Honorable City Council, attached for your review and approved is the proposed 2023 member rate schedule for the Beverly Golf and Tennis Club submitted by Golf Facilities Management, Inc. and recommended by the Beverly Golf and Tennis Commission. There are no changes to the rules and member permit fees and rental rates for carts and clubs for 2023. The weekday and weekend green fee rates are increased by $1 to help offset multiple cost increases, including minimum wage increase, fuel costs, fertilizer costs, and significant utility increases as indicated in the attached document from Golf Facilitation Management. The 2023 rates have been received and accepted by the Commission on February 14, 2023. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 54, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, William Kendrick of 2 Webster Avenue of Beverly to serve on the Beverly Airport Commission. His term to be effective until December 31st, 2025. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 55, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Corey Fernella, 30 Bow Street, Beverly, to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals. His term is to be effective until January 31st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 56, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Kyle Redelack of 346 Elliott Street, Beverly, to serve on the Beverly Airport Commission. His term is to be effective until December 31st, 2025. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 57, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to review and recommendation, Nancy Schulk, thank you, 13 Bertram Street, Beverly, to serve on the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. Her term is to be effective until January 31st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 58, Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly, as a fiduciary agent for the Beverly Arts District, has been awarded a $15,000 Cultural District Incentive Grant from the Mass Cultural Council. This grant funding will be used to support the Beverly Arts District, a state-designated culture district, and a partnership between the City of Beverly and Beverly Main Streets and Montserrat College of Art. This is the 5th consecutive year the district has received this grant, and the year's award doubles since last year. The funds will be used in accordance with goals identified in planning for the Beverly Arts District during 2017-2019 in discussions among the partners, including activities to beautify a program and attract people to the district. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval for any grant, earmark, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for their prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 59. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to your review and recommendation, George Binns of 51 Baker Ave, Beverly, and Mr. Michael Collins, Commissioner of Public Services and Engineering, City of Beverly, to serve on the Parking and Traffic Commission. Their terms are effective until March 1st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 60. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to the review and recommendation, Ronald Genest of 9 Vineyard, Danvers, and Jan Pierce of 1 Neptune Court, Beverly, to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee. I respectfully ask the City Council to waive the residency requirement for Mr. Genest as he represents the Herman A. Spear Post 331 on the committee. These terms are effective March 1st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 61. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Dana Morton, owner of Micro Support Group 6, Washington Street, Beverly, to serve as the Beverly Chamber of Commerce representative on the Parking and Traffic Commission. Dana Morton will replace Mr. Richard Vincent, who recently stepped down. His term is to be effective March 1st, 2024. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 62, the Committee on, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Alyssa Raymond Reed, 163 Lothrop Street, Beverly, to serve on the Human Rights Commission. Her term is to be effective until April 4th, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 63. Dear Honorable City Council, as many of you know from our work together, the Department of Public Services plays a critical role in the operations of our city government, currently comprised of 9 operational divisions and roughly 100 employees. DPS is one of the largest departments within the city. We are looking to perform a restructuring within the department to allow additional support in 2 important areas. First, the creation of an assistant director will allow for additional oversight and management of the many projects this department oversees. Second, as one of the largest departments in business managing function, is required to support the volume and range of operational and business tasks that are performed across the 9 divisions. Both of these positions are expected to be budget neutral, in part through one existing unfilled position being eliminated, but will provide a better focus and targeted support of the current structure within the department. We look forward to discussing this in more detail in the upcoming city council meeting. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services. And that brings us to 7:30. So we will open our first posted public hearing, which is posted for 7:30. This is public hearing on order number 37. Ms. Kent.
Order number 37, 2023, City of Beverly ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly holding a public hearing on Monday, March 6, 2023, at 7:30 PM at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, council chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a request for an interdepartmental transfer of $315,000 to be used to support ongoing overtime needs within the fire department, purchasing 2 new vehicles for the Department of Municipal Inspections, and cover costs, overages, and janitorial services, as well as city's insurance premiums. And this was in the newspaper, published on February 24th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. So I will just reiterate, if there are members of the public who are interested in speaking in this public hearing on Order 37, it's the first sheet to my right, your left when you go up. If you would like to sign up, you can come up at any point, and we will take members of the public in the order that they're signed up on that sheet. The other public hearings follow across, so if you're here for another public hearing, you can also come up at any point and add your name to that list. And so, Mr. Ailes, or Mr. Mayor, or both of you.
Hi, Madam President, and thank you. I'll be brief, and then I'll turn to Mr. Ailes. There are a number of accounts or line items in here. I just wanted to touch on one point. I know a couple of folks reached out to you at the last meeting and expressed concerns about the Veterans Chapter 115 benefit line. Just want to say to you, there is no way we would ever do anything to undermine veterans' benefits in our community. Mr. Ailes will walk you through, kind of what we've seen as recent history in the line. Our veteran service agent, David Parentchief, does a fantastic job of proactively seeking out and ensuring that people who are eligible for benefits sign up for, and then he does a great job of managing that process. So we, as you will see, and as I think you've already seen, there have been a couple of years where that line has been not spent to the level budgeted, and that's been something that's been trackable during the course of the budget year, and so we have moved some out of that line in the past. And it's really just a budget management process at this point in the year as other needs show themselves. If in the, I think, really unlikely occurrence that there was some kind of a run on that line between now and the end of the fiscal year, we'd come back and ask you to replenish it. We're statutorily obligated to deliver those benefits, and we certainly would have no intention of doing anything but. So I'll turn to Mr. Ailes because he is the financial expert on, managing our budget and forecasting out as we look at various points during the fiscal year out to the end of the fiscal year. So thanks so much for your attention to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ailes.
Thank you. Well stated. There's a lot of pieces to this transfer request. As is typical in any given year, once or twice a year, we come before the council to basically realign some spending. When we build the budget, which is roughly 12 months ago, we built this year's fiscal budget, we make a lot of assumptions that get built into what we expect to spend certain lines at. And so this is our first attempt this fiscal year to realign some of those costs. And we have some areas that require reallocation of some money to help support the spending level, and other areas that aren't spending quite at the level we originally budgeted for. So it's basically just a realignment, if you will, of the resources that were appropriated at the beginning of the fiscal year. We have, in terms of needs, we have a line item for fire department shift coverage for $140,000. We're seeking to transfer money in for that. We have about $25,000, it is $25,000, into the harbor master's budget for 2 different aspects. The first is for a match for a pump boat purchase. The grant will be forthcoming in the very near future, but this will be the match component to support that grant, as well as the ability to restructure some of the pay rates within his assistant harbor master line. Harbor Master Peter Dickman is here if we have any more specific questions about that. In addition to that, we've got some property and casualty overages, which is housed within the accounting department, but it covers all of property and casualty insurance throughout the city of about $40,000. We also are looking to purchase 2 new inspection vehicles within the building inspections department. Those would be EV vehicles that we're looking to purchase before the end of the fiscal year. And then lastly, in terms of needs, the police budget, we're looking to transfer an additional $40,000 into the police budget. This has to do with janitorial services that were originally budgeted for a 12-month period. You'll recall earlier this fiscal year that we came before you because we had 2 invoices from the previous fiscal year, FY22, that needed to be paid. Actually, it was more than 2 invoices, but the amount of that payment was $39,000. So because we were budgeted so right on point for FY23, the use of that $40,000 to pay previous year invoices created a $40,000 hole in that line item, and we're looking to backfill those funds so that the police budget doesn't get impacted from the previous year invoices. In order to fund this $315,000 of identified needs, we're looking to take $50,000 from the full-time public safety dispatch line, $75,000 from the part-time public safety dispatch line. As the mayor spoke about, $100,000 from veterans benefits, and I'm happy to get into that in more detail if we need to, and $90,000 in short-term principal to cover the $315,000 of reallocation. I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions about specifics there.
Counselors, are there any questions about any of the specifics? Counselor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Ailes, for outlining the details underlying this transfer. The questions that I have a handful, but I'll start with the ones that pertain to the Chapter 115 proposed transfer. And I appreciate the comments of the mayor, emphasizing the city's commitment to our veterans, which I know the council shares as well. Just to make sure I understand the mechanics of this budget, so I did a little bit of research, and I have talked to Dave Parent Chief about it before. So it's my understanding that veterans benefits in the state are split, 75% of the state picking up the cost of qualifying benefits, and then the city pays the remaining 25%. Is it a reimbursement basis from the state where the city has to pay the costs up front for any qualifying benefits and then apply for that remaining 75% from the state?
That's how it works. So the city pays 100% of the benefits up front, and in a subsequent year, on the cherry sheet, receives a 75% reimbursement.
Okay, and so putting that taking that context and looking at previous fiscal year budgets in this account and actual spending, I know that in previous fiscal years, we've underspent this budget. Is that, and then so trying to relate that to the budget itself, is the reason that we budget for veterans benefits at a higher level than what we've spent historically in previous fiscal years to allow for some space in the event that the city doesn't ultimately receive reimbursement from the state for benefits that we pay out on the front end and don't actually receive reimbursement for on the back end? Has that happened?
So the rationale behind the higher budget levels at the beginning of the fiscal year have to do with the peaks in the previous fiscal year. So we analyze these benefits on a monthly basis. And so when we sit down to set the coming year's fiscal budget, we'll look at the peak in spending and say, which last in FY22 was $38,000. And we'll say, if we spent $38,000 per month, what does the budget need to be? And we'll set the budget at that rate. Year to date, we've spent an average of $20,000 a month. So you can see $18,000 a month in extra capacity becomes available for other needs throughout the city. But we initially put it there in this particular category because prior to prior to probably the last decade or so, the city has fallen short in this area and had to come up with money mid-year to reallocate to this line. So we're effectively doing the inverse, and that's why every year we see money ultimately being transferred out of this budget, because we budget it very carefully in the beginning. We make sure we have plenty of money in case of higher spending levels.
Okay, that's helpful. And then it sounds like, and just to have you clarify, if for some reason we were to see a spike in the demand for veterans benefits between now and the end of the fiscal year, there would be a transfer into the account, whether it was from the reserve for unforeseen expenses or somewhere else in the budget, to make sure that there's no scenario where we don't have the funding to cover benefits for those who have applied and have qualified in Beverly.
100%, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have other questions, but I know counselors may have some specific to Chapter 115, so I'll come back to those later.
Thank you very much, Counselor Sweeney. We'll come back to you for those. Counselor St. Hilaire.
So just picking up on Counselor Sweeney's questioning there, so it sounds like we've changed the way we're budgeting for this line item. Is that what you're saying?
Probably about 8 years ago, we started budgeting a little more aggressively for this line.
I don't recall ever transferring money out of this.
Yeah, I can tell you that I've got a few years here. FY21, the original budget was $525,000. We transferred out $30,000. We only spent $350,000 of that. So the rest ends up going back to the general fund into free cash. In FY22, similarly, we started the year with a budget of $480,000. We transferred out $33,000 and some change, and we only spent $258,000 of that. So you can see that it's not uncommon for this wide of a gap to exist. Right now, in FY23, we originally budgeted at $460,000. Through the end of February, 8 months, we've only spent $160,000. So that's $20,000 a month. If you carry that out through the end of June, that's another, that's another 4 months, so that's another $80,000. So you'd expect to spend about $240,000 in total, but there's $460,000 sitting in the budget. So there's definitely capacity to be able to remove this $100,000 that we're looking to pull out.
Counselor.
If I could I get Mr. Perry to weigh in on this? I'd love to hear Mr. Perry's thoughts and whether this is a standard practice in other communities.
Madam President, members of the committee, council, good evening. Always a pleasure.
Good evening. And Mr. Perry, if we come to 7:45, I'll just pause you so that we can open and recess the next one.
Sure.
I just don't want you to be caught off guard.
I can answer, I was going to get up I asked the council president to speak at the end. Do you want me to go through the whole thing here or just speak to the veterans, Madam President?
I think it makes sense just if you want to address Counselor St. Hilaire's particular question.
I've been sitting next to a couple of gentlemen, the veterans, I think, represent, so we've been having some pretty good, quiet conversation. Counsel, to answer your question, everything that Mr. Ailes has articulated is 100% accurate. I have carefully reviewed this. It came to my attention last week that this seemed to be a bit of an issue. We are underspending what the needs of the veterans, number one. As Mr. Ailes indicated, we have plenty of money left at the end of the fiscal year to cover the veterans. I do not, as your budget analyst, anticipate them running out of money. However, if they run out of money, which I highly, highly, highly doubt, as your budget analyst, I will be all over the finance director and the mayor personally to make sure we cover it, because traditionally, the administration comes before you usually twice a year for budget issues to do transfers. This is normal routine practice. This is something we do all the time. It's good fiduciary practice to make sure we do not run deficits. Bottom line, I'm going to steal Mr. Ailes', I'm guarantee you 100% that the veterans will have all their needs met. There are sufficient funds to have it done, and as your budget analyst, I'm extremely comfortable with this transfer as well as the others, and I would recommend that you do the transfer, Mr. Counselor, if that helps.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there other questions from counselors? Counselor Bowen.
I'll phrase it quickly and maybe the answer comes after.
I was just going to say, let's do that.
And similarly, just on other topics, but on this one of my questions, a lot of the feedback we received was if there's extra money in that overall budget envelope for veteran services, why can't we spend it on veterans in another way, for example, in staffing to help them access those benefits?
And before you answer that, Mr. Ailes, I think That was very prescient. We will pause this public hearing to call to order our posted public hearing for 7:45 on Order 41. Ms. Ken.
Order number 41 of 2023, City of Beverly, ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, March 6, 2023, at 7:45 PM at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, council chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a $560,000 grant from Seaport Economic Council for project work at 4 Cabot Street parcel. The grant requires a 20% match of funding, a request for a transfer of $119,270 to be transferred from the city's free cash balance, and that $20,730 be transferred from the HMA fund balance. And this was in the newspaper on Friday, February 24th, 2023.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ken. I would entertain a motion to recess the public hearing on Order 41 to 8:15 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. So we will recess that public hearing on Order 41 to 8:15 PM. Although if anyone's here to speak on it, you can come up at any point and add your name, members of the public. And we will resume our public hearing on Order number 37, where we left off, with Councillor Bowen's question and Mr. Ailes.
Sure. We have a number of spending areas within within individual department budgets that aren't necessarily operational costs of a department. For example, the insurance premium that's also on this order, that lies within the accounting department. It's $1 million line item, and it's within the accounting department. If there's savings there, we're not looking to reallocate funds within the individual department. So this is really viewed, in my mind, as a city resource that's designed specifically for Chapter 115 services for the veterans. Historically, as needs have arisen within the Veterans Department, we've met it from time to time with the capacity within this budget line. But just because it becomes available in one particular year doesn't mean it's going to be available indefinitely. So when you talk about staffing, whether it's Veterans Department, Accounting Department, any department, anytime there's budgetary savings that are somewhat of a recurring costs, you don't want to reallocate that to a fixed cost that recurs year after year after year, because then when the spending needs to increase back to meet that original obligation, you don't have the budgetary capacity. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying, when we talk about staffing adjustments, it's not something that we take very lightly. We analyze the need very closely. We make sure there's long-term capacity in the forecast to absorb any additional staffing adjustments. And it's a conscious decision that's made, and discussions occur every budget cycle on whether or not we can and can't adjust any type of staffing structures. So.
Follow-up, Councillor Bowen?
Yes, I think so, because that does very much make sense from a budget principles standpoint. But I guess it's sounding to me like there is a year-over-year cushion in one budget line related to veteran services, and that the ability of that department to assist people is critical to their accessing those benefits. So they actually sort of work in tandem, because the bureaucracy is such that without staff assistance to help you navigate, a lot of people don't access benefits that they are eligible for. And so investing enough in the support for people to get all of the services they need, including that benefit line, is important to build in over time and in a sustainable way. To my mind, in some ways, more so than building in an extremely conservative figure that we're pretty sure we're never going to use. But that when we discuss at budget time, the overall amount of funding, city funding going into veteran services looks like a larger amount every year than the sort of value that we get for that. So to my mind, while in general that's a smart budgetary principle, in this specific case, it seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah. I would just add for clarification, these budget figures that get developed and baked into the budget aren't really just kind of random pie in the sky. There was a point probably, it was right around when the current Veterans Service Director, Dave Parent-Chief, came on board, that the city was spending $500,000 to $600,000 a year in this line item. So it's not uncommon or unheard of to spend at these levels. And over time, we very carefully precipitated off of those highs and tried to kind of bring it down to a more reasonable, and tried to kind of bring it down to a more reasonable level every year.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Crowley.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted clarification. I listening to what Matt was saying, St. Hilaire and stuff, and what you were talking about previous years, we've been averaging about $30,000 over and above that you were saying. And so my question is, why are we looking at $100,000 now?
Yeah, so the spending average per month is going down.
Okay.
You know, I made reference to a couple fiscal years. So 2021, we spent $350,000 of a $525,000 budget. So recognizing that, for FY22, we brought the budget down to $480, and then we spent it $258. So seeing the $258, a little hesitant to say that's the new norm. We looked at some of the peaks we saw in that particular year and based the FY23 budget off of those peaks. In hindsight, 8 months later, incorrectly, right? We were a little too aggressive with that number. But at the rate we're going at now, at $20,000 a month, we're going to spend, to say, $240,000 of a $460,000 budget. That's $220,000, or roughly, a little bit more than 50% spending. So even with taking this $100,000 out, you've still got over $100,000 in kind of cushion in case these last few months begin to spike.
Sure. Follow up? So, and I don't know if you would know this, and I may have to get with him, is do we know what the big reasoning of the decline? Is it numbers of veterans not participating? Is it, or would you even know?
So what I do know is just, you know, the conversations we've had, David and I, he's very good at identifying support for veterans outside of the city. And so with the Chapter 115, it's almost, in some regards, a last resort for veterans. And so if he's able to identify other sources of support that can meet the need that the veteran has, he'll point him in that direction. And whether that's federal or state, he'll rely on the Chapter 115 as kind of the last resort. And he's been very good about doing that, too.
Yes, yeah.
So.
Good. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yep.
Counselor St. Hilaire.
So it sounds like the administration doesn't think there's a need for additional staffing. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say that. I think it gets reviewed every year when we sit down for budget.
Have we benchmarked against other communities like we have in other departments?
I'd have to review my notes with Dave in like last budget, discussions.
Okay. I mean, I guess what I'm feeling is there's not a lot of excitement for cutting a veteran's benefit, and just trying to understand if that same feedback we've been hearing about staffing is adding up and whether there's additional need there, or, to count to Mr. Perry's point that, we could always address this at a later date, but I guess there's no question there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, Council St. Hilaire, respectfully, that I would take exception to is it's not a cut to benefits.
Okay.
All right, it's a cut to it's a reallocation of a budget, yes, but we're not actually cutting any benefits that veterans receive.
Okay,
It's
that's
just,
a fair point. Appreciate that.
We'll meet what they need.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sweeney, I know you had some that we're coming back to as well, but.
Yes,
just a
thank you,
follow-up to
Madam
here.
President. I did want to just shift the focus to the fire department shift coverage transfer. And, Councilor St. Hilaire was getting at a question that is more geared toward the FY24 budget, which is the case here. And I know from my day job in municipal government, it's very hard to predict what you're going to ultimately spend for public safety overtime, just given the nature of the need for overtime arising for a whole variety of reasons. It's a hard account to predict. But that being said, I am curious, is it more so due to one-off factors in this current fiscal year that's driving a notable increase in the need for overtime for the fire department, or are you expecting this need to continue into FY '24 and potentially result in a notable shift to how we've funded the fire department overtime budget?
Yeah, I think there's been a steady commitment to recognize that it's in our residents' best interest to run 4 trucks. We've made that commitment by purchasing the ladder truck, and with that carries a commitment to staffing those 4 trucks on a regular basis. That has a big piece to do with, if you looked year over year, somewhat of a steady increase in the overtime usage within the fire department. And Chief, please feel free to help me out here. I'll actually wait for him to come up,
Okay,
because
thank you.
he
I
knows the
appreciate it.
specifics.
Thank you, Chief O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate you having me up here. I take a lot of time to put into the budget, and I apologize for even having to come up here and do this to you. We did see a pretty sharp decline at the outset of the year, some stuff that I did not expect. Basically, we started the first 3 months out of the year short 10 full positions. 2 retirements, 2 military, and 6 that were significantly injured or sick. We're recovered a large part from that. Right now, I have 1 out for military service. He's actually going to be out for a bit. And I'm down to 1 person left on long-term 111F right now. And we're hoping to get that stuff squared away. We made some plans early last year. We did have some retirements at the end of the year. In our efforts to pre-fill, we ended up actually losing 2 more after July 1st. So it was kind of a little bit of a perfect storm. One of the other things that we did have in the budget last year as an expectation was we had a potential for a grant that just didn't work out. It was a very competitive grant. My hopes were high, but we did not receive that. So that kind of left us where we are. So,
Thank you very much, Chief.
thank you.
Counselor Sweeney, did you have a follow-up to that one?
I guess just generally, I am curious about the grant, but we can follow up separately on that. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I know, so it sounds like, based on what you're saying, given those vacancies that the department had going into the fiscal year, and then, the situation with the 111F that is you can't predict, it sounds like this seems to be more of a one-off contained to this fiscal year as opposed to a structural imbalance in the fire department overtime line that we would need to address coming into this fiscal year '24 budget.
Yeah, I think it's both, Counselor, honestly. I mean, because we're running 4 trucks, there will be a regular need for overtime.
Okay.
The original budget that we set this year reflected that level that we felt was appropriate. And then everything the chief just mentioned kind of added to the increase. But I would expect somewhat of a level request, hopefully. I mean, I'm knocking on wood, the budget's still yet to be set, but somewhat of a level kind of level request going forward, barring any unforeseen, things that may occur.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Level from the original budget, not necessarily this higher level. But it's also one of those moving targets. I mean, the chief is very good at managing the budget and as tightly as he can as we go through the fiscal year, and he's in a lot of communication with me on a regular basis to say, I got an issue here, we got a plan for it, we got a mind for it. So even though you're seeing this now for the first time, I know Mr. Perry, through his memos to you, has alluded to the fact that, the trends are leading us to ultimately have to put more money into this budget. And we've known that for months now, so.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thanks.
Counselor Rand, and we may have to do the same thing where we just pause after your question before the answer, just to open the 8 o'clock hearing, and then we'll come back.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a question and a point, but I sort of just wanted to clarify a little bit around the conversation of the Chapter 115 money and the veterans benefits. I know when I first got elected, it was very confusing to think about this line item and what it goes towards, how it's funded, how it's spent, how people learn about it. But I just want to clarify for the public's sake, for anyone who's in here and for the council, that's not, and you've said this already, but that's just Chapter 115 money. It's basically intended to support that that program, that state funding. And I think if, what I'm hearing on the council is that there's an appetite for sort of funding the Veterans Services Department at a higher level. That would be a completely separate line item. So I guess I just want to make that clear, because I don't want it to sound like we're taking veterans' benefits away. Maybe saying it in a different way is helpful. But that being said, there's clearly some funding there that could be reallocated to a different department, and that's something, hopefully, if you're interested, that's something we can think about.
Madam President, if I could, just as a comment to that,
Yes.
very quickly.
Is it under a minute comment?
Absolutely.
Please.
You triggered a memory of mine, and that was that this council was supportive of actually increasing the funding for staff within that department this past fiscal year. Prior to this past fiscal year, we didn't have anybody but just the Veteran Service Director. This year, we have a part-time employee who's helping out and filling in some of the holes as they exist. So we're moving in that direction, but thank you for pointing that out, Councilman.
Thank you.
You have another question as well?
I did. I actually had a question about if you have the total amount for the janitorial contract for the police department. It feels strange that we keep funding it. I know you've
Yep.
explained the 2 other rounds, but
Yes, I do. It's $10,484 per month. And so times 12 months, that's $125,808, or as the budget reflects, $126,000. What isn't included in that original budget is the $39,354 in prior year invoices that were paid out of that line. So that's what we're replenishing.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Thank you, Councilor Rand. We will pause this public hearing to open our posted 8 o'clock public hearing on order number 14. Please, Ms. Kent.
Order number 14 of 2023, City of Beverly, ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, March 6, 2023, at 8 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a proposal to name the Harbor Master Building in honor of Harbor Master Daniel McPherson. Ordinance to take effect upon publication and final passage, and this is in the newspaper on Friday, February 3rd, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I would entertain a motion to recess this public hearing to 8:10.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. So we'll recess the public hearing on order 14 to 8:10, although anyone here to speak on that public hearing can come up at any point and add your name, and we'll pick up again with the public hearing on order 37. Are there any further questions or comments at this point from members of the council? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. I had some other sort of unrelated questions I don't think have been covered yet, and I'm just trying to find them all. I appreciate some more detail on each of the lines in the intro. And so one question on sources, well, I guess 2 questions on the additional source lines. If you could just give a very quick update on where we stand with the public safety dispatch process, because I think there's 275,000 or so in that budget line. This would take 125,000 from that, so just sort of where that math comes from. And similarly, the short-term principle, just sort of what real thing in the world means that funding that was allocated.
Yeah, so the short-term principle first, that's a budget line that tends to go to authorized projects that may require cash infusions, either to round out a bond authorization or a borrowing, or to pay down principal prior to going to fully bond in between bans and bonds. We thought that originally there might be an opportunity to pay some funds associated with one of the many capital projects that we've got going on. The timing of the borrowing is that we won't be borrowing before the end of the fiscal year for this building or McPherson or any of the projects, so there's no opportunity there right now. So that's why we can take those monies and reallocate them. As far as the public safety dispatch goes, I'm sure you're all aware we have hired a supervisor. She's been working over there for a while now. I could ask anyone in the room, I think, but 7 months? Some months, and we're working towards the next phase with all the parties that are involved in it. Which would be, hiring of staff and such.
And then I think on the transfer to side, was curious about the municipal inspections vehicles, in particular, if those were likely to be part of the EV transformation we're moving towards or not.
Yes, in fact, there are no vehicles that the city purchases without the mayor asking the question, do they have an EV available, and is it practical for our needs? So yes, they will be EV vehicles.
Great. And then I think my last just question on the overall structure of this request. For the most part, I think I'm supportive of all the transfers into budget lines that need them. The needs seem real and timely and important, and just to have the maximum flexibility to be able to fund those without disrupting other department operations. I'm curious about sort of the selection of those sources. I know we already depleted the reserve for unforeseen, which seems like a natural first move, and there's a proposal to replenish that that will come before us in a couple weeks. But just sort of if you can walk us through that, because of things like, being able to have the conversation about the veterans benefits line and help everyone understand how that line in the budget is constituted, what it delivers, what it means for what we actually spend on the Veterans Service Department outside of those benefits is really great, but also a bit of a separate conversation from just the need to fill these other gaps. So sort of how you come to that proposal versus other ways of funding those gaps.
Yeah, great question, and I think you answered the question in your comments, because these are areas that will not disrupt operations within the city, and those tend to be the ones we look at first. We also know some of the larger lines that we keep a close eye on throughout the year in hopes or in, at least monitoring whether or not we're going to underspend these lines. So these are areas that are larger in the budget, kind of easy to grab at because they're not spending at the level originally budgeted. And that's effectively it. We're just not at a place where we would want to disrupt any services that we collectively have committed to in the budget and within our services, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions or comments from the council at this point before we go to members of the public? Okay. Ms. Dixon, would you be able to bring us the sign-up sheet, please? And if you are here to speak on another public hearing, these will still be available in front of Ms. Kent, so don't worry, you haven't missed your chance. You can still come up and sign up. So we do have 2 members of the public here in the room who have signed up to speak on order number 37. And the first is Karen Gallagher. If you'd like to come up, and if you would, state your name and address for the record before you begin. And for our public hearings, I do invite usually Councilor Rotundo, Vice President Rotundo, just to keep time for 3 minutes per speaker, just so we make sure everyone gets the same opportunity. And that will be just about right, because I won't have to interrupt Ms. Gallagher before we recess the next hearing again. So, Ms. Gallagher.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Karen Gallagher, and I live at 9 High Street. I am here this evening to voice my concerns over the proposed reallocation funds of Chapter 115. As you know, Chapter 115 serves some of the most vulnerable community members, low-income veterans. In order to qualify, you must be 200% below the federal poverty level. For qualifying veterans, these funds could mean the difference between having a roof over one's head or experiencing an unhoused situation. During these uncertain times, it doesn't seem prudent to reallocate these funds at this time of the year. I believe I was told reallocation of funds usually happens at the end of the fiscal year, so this is something new. Maybe I'm incorrect on that. But either way, We need to think about the rising costs of fuel, groceries, utilities, rent payments, and all other essentials that are affecting those who are struggling financially. There are emergency services provided to homeowners through Chapter 115 that we must also consider. I contacted Dave Parent Chief to learn firsthand about what was done in the past. He told me he did not receive any communication on this matter, and he could not speak on this any further. As I continued to question him, he would only say he had, on other occasions, provided details to ensure that such a cut would have been handled with some level of review. Perhaps due to his long history of being so careful and astute, it was assumed everything would be okay. I truly hope this lack of communication was an oversight. In addition, I have the pleasure of speaking with the VSO from Peabody. He told me Chapter 15 is far too important to cut or reallocate, and Peabody City Councilors would never consider such a devastating cut to their veteran community or reallocation. He affirmed that Salem and Danvers feel exactly the same way, and he hoped Beverly would find other resources to fund interdepartmental shortfalls. Even though I've been assured funding would be reallocated if need be, this proposal deeply concerns me. Veterans may feel their contributions are not valued in our city. It could result in undue stress and feelings of uncertainty. I don't have to explain the fact that many veterans already suffer from high anxiety, depression, and PTSD. In closing, I look forward to working with Mayor Cahill and council members on improving benefit awareness for Beverly veterans and promoting additional staff for this department. I respectfully ask members of the City Council to seek out other resources to fund these requests. As we continue to show our veterans the gratitude and respect they deserve, I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gallagher. And thanks for being here and for speaking in the public hearing. It's always really important to have members of the public participate, and I appreciate that. Before we go to our next member of the public in this public hearing, I am going to pause this public hearing so that we can reopen our recessed public hearing on order number 14. And I would entertain a motion to recess it to 8:20.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. So we will resume that at 8:20, and we'll resume now with our public hearing in order 37 and pick up with our next citizen speaker who's signed up, Travis Foley. And if you would, when you get to the microphone, just begin with your name and address for the record, and then you have up to 3 minutes. Or until you hear whatever goes off on Councilor Rotundo's phone. We never know what song it's gonna play.
Gotcha, will do. So my name is Travis Foley. I live at 62 Pleasant Street as the live-in responder for the veterans down there. First, I heard of the problem that was going on, or not really the problem, but the issue of this, I believe, I don't really know the name of it, but of the provised information, or I think we were taking money out of the budget line or whatever. But I heard from those veterans down there. I know the veterans a lot more than I believe the general public may as well. I'm a veteran myself. I served for 2 years. I got out. I have a few health issues, as I believe the past lady had said. So I know those veterans a lot. Those guys genuinely feel like they do not see anything from the city. I have had personal talks with Mr. Parent Chief because I had to go through the same process of disability. It took almost a full year just to even get a single inch on that military. And I wanted to say, I think it was Mr. Matthew St. Hilaire, he brought up the job at, I believe it's a part-time job or the opening of staff up there. We do not have a second staff member. The only other person who was up there was doing it out of his own free time. And I will say, with Dave operating with all these different cities and all these different just veterans that are here, and then me seeing it firsthand, that all the issues that they have to deal with, it does feel like the city doesn't care about us. It does feel like the city looks at us and goes, oh, you know what, well, maybe we'll help you out next year. It's honestly very disrespectful, but I'm not going to take it out on any of you guys. I believe you are doing at least the most you can do within the allotted time that you have or the allotted budget that you have. But if we could open up another staff position at that office, so, like, I believe it was 2 months ago, Dave Parent Chief went for an operation on his arm. When he's out for a week, 2 weeks at a time, you're basically telling those veterans that had appointments for him, oh, since there's not a secondary staff member there, you're just going to have to wait until he gets back. To me, that is just blasphemy. I feel like if there is a second staff member there, it would be great. When it comes to the, what is it, Chapter 517 or 515, those veterans down there, a lot of them do not work. They cannot work. So they either make a living off of disability along with the or I believe it's 515, but they have to be on a very strict, you can't do these select things. Like if you're found to be not able to pay for your rent down at 62 Pleasant Street, you will have, or not being able to pay your rent, buying things that are illegal or doing illegal things, being caught up in, I believe, police issues, you are cut from that, because why would we want to supply those citizens if they're going to do illegal things with the money that is given by the state and then by the town as well? So at least he is very close-knit and makes sure that everything falls along a very strict guideline. I just wanted to bring to awareness that also the veterans, we do feel like you guys just look at us and go, all right, next year, we got you. All right, thank you for this evening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foley. Thank you for being here and for speaking in our hearing. We do need to just pause one more time, sorry, to reopen the public hearing on Order 41, which was recessed to 8:15, and I would entertain a motion to recess this one to 8:45.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll recess Order 41 to 8:45, and we'll pick back up with Order 37. Are there other members of the public here in the room who wish to speak on this public hearing? Okay. Counselor Bowen, I know we received one communication from a member of the public who intended to be here. Would you read that into the record, please?
Yes, so we received a comment from Julie De Silva at 201 Elliott Street, and Julie says, I am writing in support of the work of Mr. Parenchief, the city's Veteran Services agent, and to ask that the city find another source for the funds proposed for transfer from the Chapter 115 budget, as it is unclear what needs may arise before this fiscal year is over. Additionally, I am concerned that reducing the budget for this essential service will impact future budgets. Unlike most on the North Shore, this office is serviced by only one agent, which means he cannot be sick, take vacation, or take time off for any reason without leaving our city's veterans without access to the liaison they need in times of crisis. If there is extra money in the budget, it is due to smart management by Mr. Parenchief. Perhaps a better use of these funds would be to add support to the Veterans Affairs team. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Counselor. And just to make sure I don't miss anyone who is here, just no further members of the public, I'm just making sure, are here for this public hearing on Order 37. Okay, seeing none. Mr. Perry, I know before you mentioned you had some broader comments, and I said you stick with Councilor St. Hilaire's question. If you have further comments, this would be a great time to hear them.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
President. Some general comments. I wrote to you over the weekend my thoughts on the general, whether you should or should not do these transfers. It is my recommendation as your budget analyst to approve all these transfers. I can tell you there are sufficient funds on transfers from to go into it, into the various deficits that are occurring in these other line items. So you have sufficient funds. Madam President, if I may, a couple comments which a few things for the public. I think there's a little confusion on how this works a little bit, so hopefully I can try to clarify it. I'm going to stand here again and reiterate that I can guarantee you that nobody who receives veterans benefits under Chapter 115 will be denied any benefits. Guaranteed, and I'm sure the mayor's not going to allow that to happen either. I guarantee you, as your budget analyst, I'll watch it. I am absolutely convinced there'll be sufficient funds through the fiscal year to get this done, and the veterans should not worry about that. So it's really important that I say that again. Secondly, with regard to the overtime situation, as you know, I've reported to you on 2 separate occasions on the budget to actual quarterly reports. You were aware that this was an issue in the fire department with the overtime, so it's not a secret to the council here. As many of you know who have been doing this for a long time, public safety overtime is difficult. It's not like a job where a lot of jobs, if you're out sick, the desk is empty. We have to replace these people. We have to have people in the cruises. We have to have people in the firehouses to man the equipment, et cetera. So we have to replace them. Things happen from time to time. People get sick more. We have illnesses. It does happen. It's not unusual. And as the fire chief will tell you, where is he? He's right here to my right. I had a very long conversation with him Friday afternoon on the phone. We talked about this. I've also challenged our finance director, wherever he's hiding over here, about this. I've been pretty much guaranteed, absent any unusual circumstances, which we can't predict, They believe that the $140,000 to go in the overtime will cover them through the end of the fiscal year. I'm confident of that, and I guarantee you I will coordinate and watch that if any problems arise. So I'm pretty comfortable with that as well. It seems to be some confusion on the veterans in terms of, it's two conversations. One is this Chapter 115, which we're transferring funds from, which in my very strong opinion, we have sufficient funds. And then there's another conversation, is there enough staffing down there to meet the needs of the veterans? I get that. I've actually talked to Mr. Parent Chief within the last year about this, and he feels that way. That's certainly a conversation that has to begin with the mayor and his staff to determine whether that's necessary. For those of you here interested in that, I can tell you, starting next Monday night, the city council is going to have a budget meeting where they're going to start looking at the council's priorities and a conversation of what we're going to do next fiscal year. For those of you who feel support that they think there's more staffing needed, in the month of June, we'll be having public hearings on what will go into the budget for the entire city, including the veterans, and there is an opportunity there if you feel that if there's no appropriation by the administration, that's the opportunity to talk about staffing levels. But with regard to Chapter 115, please leave this meeting tonight knowing every veteran's needs will be met under that chapter. I promise you that. Having said that, Madam President, and I know you're running out of time, it's my recommendation to the council that you approve this request as requested by the administration. You don't want to run deficits in the middle of the fiscal year. There was a speaker who talked about, they do this at the end of the year. That's not true. From my experience, it's good financial practice to do it in mid-year, and that's the secondly good, obviously, we have to do it at the end of the fiscal year. We cannot have deficits. It will be detrimental to the balance sheet, and we don't want to do that. This is normal practice for those of you who don't understand municipal finance, and the administration is doing the right thing by coming forward to you tonight. Madam President, I recommend the approval of the proposal by the mayor, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Councilors, are there any questions for Mr. Perry? And if there are, Councilor St. Hilaire, I'll come to you in just 1 second.
Yep.
I'm just going to reopen the public hearing on Order 14 that we recessed to 8:20, and I'd like to recess this one just to 8:35, please. This is the next one I'd like to stick with because I think this is the other one we have members of the public and others here for.
Second.
That was great. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll put that to 8:35 and plan to stay with that one through its duration when we get to it. And we will go back to 37, Councilor St. Hilaire.
So, Mr. Perry, I guess regarding the confusion, the Chapter 115 budget line item, can that money be used for anything else other than Chapter 115 benefits?
Yes, subject to the approval of the city council.
If we left it in the line where it is today, could that be used for other benefit items?
Only if the mayor,
And
the
other
administration comes
veteran-related
forward to, they
items?
have to come forward to you, but the answer is yes.
Okay, and then my second question, if we were to not, I guess the suggestion that we find somewhere else to get the money, where would you go next to look for this? Because I do obviously support the expense side.
I mean, there are other, snow and ice is looking good right now, but we want to be a little careful. We're still not out of the snow season yet. As Mr. Collins certainly knows, we can get a storm tomorrow. I'm cautiously optimistic that we may have a few dollars there. The public safety dispatch still is an opportunity there. But, Councilor, I wish if people fully understand municipal finance, the transferring this is not going to be a problem in terms of services. I know people don't believe me on this, and I don't know how else to do it, but I'm giving you over 4 decades of experience.
I guess what you're suggesting is that we have a debate about the staffing at a later date.
That's a different conversation. I agree with you, Councilor. If people want more staffing down there, I think that's a legitimate conversation to have and something we can address going into the next year's budget.
It sounds like we're having that discussion.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm waiting for the city solicitor to say we're violating open meeting laws. We're talking about something not on the agenda. But having said that,
I guess
that's a conversation we should have. And starting next Monday night.
If we were to transfer his money now, are we missing that opportunity to address that now?
Not at all. The opportunity, if you transfer this money, as I'm recommending you do, we can still have that conversation, we can still address that, and the council certainly is voicing their public opinion. It sounds like a lot of you are interested in putting additional staffing there. The mayor is hearing this, he's here tonight, and I think that's a good discussion to have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Feldman.
Yes, thank you. I don't exactly have a question, but I feel like there is some type of disconnect between what we are trying to achieve as counselors, because as I believe Mr. Ailes said, that we did look for funding for a part-time position with Veteran Services last year, correct? So.
I think there was a conversation, yes.
We funded it last,
Oh, the part-time, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
so I guess what I'm hearing is that we continue to have a budget that we allocate wanting to support veteran services every year for the last several years, and it goes unspent. So I don't know, and then we hear from veterans saying that that they feel like the city doesn't support them, and I just feel like there's something missing somewhere
Yeah.
that we're trying to fund at a level that we think is supporting veteran services,
Yeah.
because that is our intention, but it's continuing to not get to where we would like it to go. And I completely agree with the transfers and if it's not going to be used, and I believe that Veteran Services Chapter 115 funding will be covered and see the expense side of it clearly, but I just, at a broader picture, at a broader level, if we continue to have this disconnect in the funding, and this is where the overage is, I would like to know as a counselor how we can better figure out how those veterans do feel supported, and we do get the money to them, and they are using their budget to capacity every year, so.
Well,
And that would be a discussion
yeah.
probably for budget season.
I guess my response, Council, would be, on this one line item, the 115 line item, I think you get it too, so I don't want to keep beating a dead horse here. On the terms of staffing, they are spending the money on the staffing that was requested of the administration and approved by this council in the FY23 budget. As I'm hearing the conversation, it sounds like there's people believe we need even more than what was appropriated. And I think we should start having that conversation next Monday night when Chairman Hausman has his group get together where we're going to talk about priorities for next year's budget. And that's a great opportunity for the council, especially with what you're hearing tonight, to voice you want that kind of stuff. You want even more than what's already been appropriated, and that's a certainly valid conversation. It's a good public policy conversation, and we have quite a few people here seem to be advocating for it, and I think we should look forward to this dialogue. But in terms of the transfers, it's a different, I think you all get that. My comments are more for some of the public members here. I'm glad I got to speak to some of the folks advocating for veterans, and I think they're getting it a little bit. But I'm assuring you, the 115 benefits are going to be met. I guarantee it. Don't worry about it. I'm actually a little surprised of this. This is a routine kind of thing, but maybe it's a good opportunity to make sure the public understands the veterans' benefits under 115 will be met.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Feldman. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. So just really following up on the last two comments, I appreciate the outline of sort of best municipal finance best practices. And also, if when this goes back to committee, there's a way to look at achieving our goal of making these transfers into lines that really need them at the right time so that they don't run deficits. And doing that in a way that doesn't disrupt operations in other departments without accidentally or unintentionally sending a message that we are not as fully supportive of the Veteran Services Department and of veterans' benefits as we are. I think that would be worthwhile, because although the numbers hold true, that the back of the envelope estimates, I believe you that this is sort of money on paper, not taking money out of people's pockets. It's still like there still are the optics of that, and if there is another line that we could tap, including reserve for unforeseen, which I think is language that people understand more clearly, and at the end of the day, the same amount of money may become available again for city services at the end of the year because it gets rolled into our unspent balances and shows up again as free cash. I think it would be beneficial to think about the optics of that in how we present this publicly. And so the richness of the discussion tonight, I think, has answered a lot of those questions and hopefully does reassure people. But, the information that was put out in our agenda didn't have that richness. And I think we needed this conversation. And so just thinking about that, both for this specific order and going forward, that we shouldn't expect everyone to be a municipal finance expert. And so if there are intricacies, like in this case, it's on us to explain them or to find a way that is more easily understandable at first glance to present it. So I don't know if there's room in the committee to look at that for the specific order.
I guess my advice, Counselor, to you and your colleagues is the following. If you were to look, it's an optical thing, it's a political thing, it's not a budgetary issue. Again, everything's going to be met. However, if it's the decision of the council to try to find another line item, and that's possible, I'm not going to dispute, it's going to take, you're going to have to come back, you're going to have another public hearing, you're going to have to vote this down, which I am advising you not to do, but that's your choice. It's going to take another month. We're carrying deficits on the book I'm not comfortable with, and I would advise you not to do that as your budget analyst. But to refresh your memory on the reserve for unforeseen, that's got no money in it right now. It's zero. And we're coming back, I think, for a public hearing next week, whereby, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from now, where we're going to replenish it, as you should recall from several months ago, from free cash, and that's on the table as well. So you got to vote your conscience. My advice to the council is to approve this request as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I know, Councilor Rand, you had one last question or comment?
I do, thank you. First, I wanted to just say through you, President, to Councilor Feldman, I really love the way you kind of summarized what was happening in the room and among the council members. That I found that helpful, and just to hear the words like, regardless of what the details are, we're hearing that veterans don't feel supported, which is a problem. So I just love that you pulled that out. And I love that this has become sort of a warm-up for budget discussions. This is good. It's good timing.
I would agree.
Yeah. And then my third thing is just one more sort of, I want one more confirmation of my understanding of Chapter 15 and the line item, Chapter 115 and the line item called Veterans Benefits. It's my understanding that it's the city's legal obligation to fund any veterans benefits requests under Chapter 115, regardless of what's even in that fund. So it could be zero, and $1 million of benefits could come in, and we as a council and as a city, we would say, yes, we're paying it. That's it. It's our
That's
legal
my understanding as well.
obligation.
Yes, we have to come up with the money. The benefits absolutely will get paid.
So that's, I just kind of, I just want people to know that it doesn't matter in a way. And I think Councilor Bowen's point about how we manage and talk about funds is a good one for budget season. But I just really want people to know that even if there was no money in that, we would have to fund that line item.
That's
We would
correct.
have to fund the request for those benefits.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
And if I just may add one more comment, there's been some discussion. Yeah, there is additional funds in there, but aren't we fortunate? You want more, would you rather have more funds than less funds? And so that's some indicative of how we handle the budgets and how we do certain appropriations and things of that nature. So it's a good problem. It's not a bad problem. It's a good problem. I'd rather have more than less, and we're able to handle this. And I go right back to you, Counselor. You're absolutely correct. We will give these benefits. I guarantee it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Councilor Rand.
I see the mayor to my left. I'm more than happy to give him the podium unless you're all done with me.
We're all done with you. Yes, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Perry. I also see the mayor. I just need to pause us so that we can open the posted public hearing for 8:30 on order 42. Ms. Kent.
Order number 42 of 2023, order the City of Council, the City of Beverly held a public hearing on Monday, March 6, 2023 at 8:30 PM at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, Council Chambers. Live stream on BevCam relative to a request for a transfer of $850,000 from the city's certified free cash balance to be placed into the city's road and sidewalk fund to support design work for the Phase 2 Brimble Ave overpass project. And this was published in the newspaper on February 24th, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I'd entertain a motion to recess this public hearing to 8:55.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 8-0. So we'll recess the public hearing on order 42 to 8:55. And we'll resume the public hearing on order 37 with a comment from you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Madam President. I know you're on the clock. 2 quick points. One, just to kind of put us back on the same page, during last budget process, we added a part-time position together That has been funded, and somebody's been working there all year at about 10 hours a week. And when Mr. Parent Chief was recently out for a week, then that person worked full-time hours during the period he was out. I also anticipate when we start to sit down with department heads very shortly, Mr. Parent Chief is probably going to be advocating for more staff at that time. That's a process we go through internally. We'll have that process together with you. Just a little context. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, I think this has been good discussion, as we've referenced. This will be referred back to the Subcommittee on Finance and Property, so I'm going to close this posted public hearing on Order 37, refer it back to the Committee on Finance and Property for further discussion and next steps in terms of action. And that brings us to our posted public hearing on Order number 14. This has been recessed to 8:35, so we are right on time. And this is the proposal to name the Harbor Master Building in honor of Harbor Master Dan McPherson. Ms. Kent?
You want to read it again?
I think so. I know you read it, but I think let's refresh our memories. And thank you to everybody who is here for Order 37 as well. Thanks to our veterans.
Ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, March 6, 2023 at 8 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a proposal to name the Harbor Master Building in honor of Harbor Master Daniel McPherson. And this was in the newspaper on Friday, February 3rd.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I know we do have some members of the public signed up to speak. Councilor Rotundo and Councilor Feldman, you originally worked together on this. I don't know if either of you wants to say anything. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. I just want to thank the gentlemen and ladies from the public service, from the various police, fire, federal agencies that brought this to my attention. This was done back last year. Actually, the first time it was discussed was the day that Mr. McPherson was actually laid to rest. It was discussed. I said I would bring the order forward. It was brought to the attention that there was no real process in place, and Councilor Feldman and I worked on that together. As you can see, there's a lot of support for this, but we want to make sure we did it correctly. It's a very important thing. I knew Dan McPherson from my interaction at the restaurant. He was a different character, but he was a character that was just straightforward. It was just who he was. It was just a character. He was, really caring, and as you can see, he had influenced a lot of people throughout this. I hope there's great support for this. As you can see, there's a lot of people out right now in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. And thank you for initially bringing this forward, and thanks to both of you for then working on the process to bring us to the point that we could, as a council, be prepared to be considering making this move and naming it after Dan McPherson. I think we'll go right to members of the public on this one. So there are 2 signed up, but I will open it up after that if anyone else would like to speak. The first is Officer Abrahamson.
Honorable City Council, my name is Eric Abrahamson. I am formerly Beverly Harbor Master, Unit 6. In 1996, as a senior at Salem State University, I met Dan McPherson. Dan allowed me the pleasure of doing my college internship under his direction. That was the beginning of my relationship. Oh. Ed, you had fireworks? No? Okay. We had a light show, but I'm sorry. That was the beginning of my relationship with a man I feel I owe a debt for my career in public safety. My internship and free labor earned the respect of Dan, and that led to a job offer to be an assistant harbor master. I was very excited. If you haven't ever laid on your back in the gravel at Jubilee Yacht Club on a raw April day, holding a sander above your face, sanding the bottom of a boat till you look like a coal miner, I highly recommend it. It builds character. Dan had a vision for Beverly Harbor and for his department in a scope never before seen in the city of Beverly. Not only that, Dan's absolute unmatched devotion to listening to the Marine radio and police radio will never be duplicated. Dan's devotion to the safety of Beverly's commercial fishermen and recreational boaters was unrivaled, by any area agency except the United States Coast Guard. Dan listened to the radios for calls for service 24/7, 365, while at work, while at home, and while in his car. What Dan did every day on his own, the Coast Guard did with 2 stations and multiple shifts of radio coverage. Dan's vision was to have a highly trained, highly motivated department with the most modern equipment available. He took over a ragtag group with little to no equipment, training, and a boat that was incapable of providing public safety to a community with 12.5 miles of coastline. Dan's vision would later see him create a fleet of boats. The 25-foot Boston Whaler became the Iron Man of the fleet. One winter, we drilled holes in the hull, and it literally drained water out of the hull the entire time. That boat was a hand-me-down, but Dan made it work. It took elbow grease and a lot of maintenance, new electronics, new pumps, new lines, new tow rope, engines, gas tanks, paint, decals, and fiberglass work. Most of the work done at the Harbor Master's office was done in-house by Dan and his assistants at great savings to the city. When the work was done and she went back in the water with a fresh American flag flying on the mast, you were proud to work here. Dan never saw a piece of junk he didn't like if it could float. Dan used military surplus program with great success and benefit to the city. His use of the program resulted in several working vessels for the city over the years, as well as obtaining tools and other usable equipment at great savings, as it was all free. One of those boats specifically was outfitted because it could fit under the railroad bridge, and the Hall Whitaker Bridge at any tide, because Dan was always thinking about safety and response. Again, the only cost was the elbow grease, the assistance, and he happily applied. The drawback was sometimes in a surplus lot, you may have had to take half a room full of camouflage flak jackets and backpack frames with no backpacks you had no use for. Back in the day, those were stored in the McDonald's basement where they took on a weird cheeseburger odor. When you work for Dan under his vision and tutelage, you learn law enforcement in Chapter 90B as he coordinated training with the Beverly Police Department. Dan's reward for hard work was often sending young assistants to the Reserve Police Academy. You learned how to safely tow a boat, you learned about boat maintenance and repairs, you learned how to use the latest in electronic equipment such as radar, GPS navigation, depth sounders, and radio direction finders. You learned first aid and were trained to be a first responder. You learned search and rescue as he coordinated training with the Beverly Fire Department and dive team. Often being underway, you also needed to be trained in using the onboard pumps to either pump out a boat taking on water or fight a fire. Under Dan's watch, the lobster boat races became a part of Beverly's homecoming celebration. Dan instituted, along with the Beverly Police Department, the first ever combined patrol with both departments operating personal watercraft. These craft were able to assist in several search and rescue operations at the time as far away as Singing Beach in Manchester. Dan also worked with the local power squadron to run safe boating classes in Beverly, and I had the pleasure to teach a few of those. For the first time ever, Beverly Harbor was able to host transient boaters on moorings Dan placed in the harbor, allowing people from outside the area to safely tie up and spend a night or two. The Beverly Harbor Master Department proudly assisted with security with the USS Constitution during its visit to Marblehead Harbor in 1997. Dan McPherson was a leader among his peers. He served as president of the North Shore Harbor Master Association. Dan worked in that capacity diligently, developing a website in the 90s and working towards uniform standards and training requirements to professionalize the position of harbor master in the state. Dan also knew Santa and arranged for Santa to visit the harbor regularly. I treasure my relationship I had with Dan. I was a young kid willing to work hard and knew I wanted to be a police officer. Through my work ethic and willingness to work, he put up with me. When he needed a night, I worked a night. When he needed a weekend, I worked a weekend. And somewhere along the way in this, I began to tell him what I think about things. Amazingly, he listened sometimes and counseled others. He respected what I had to say, and to the guys who probably remember some of our exchanges, we probably sounded like an old married couple. Dan, as a leader, had my back. He had my back and supported my efforts trying to keep Beverly Harbor a safe place because I was an extension of him on the boat. He had my back when I made the newspaper as a part-time nobody doing a part-time job. He backed my decisions and did so in black and white in the newspaper supporting me. And those who knew me then, don't laugh out loud. It's not a stretch to say that the only gray I had heard of at the time was battleship gray, and I painted with it, and that was all. But Dan supported and trusted his people, and if Dan didn't feel that way with you, you found yourself off the schedule. I even ended up with a marine radio in my Jeep and a marine radio at my house. I was living with my mother at the time, and I had a rigged up marine antenna hanging out of my bedroom window, listening just like Dan. Dan had come to trust me and offered me the position of Deputy Harbor Master. There was no such thing at the time. Dan found the money in his budget to pay me a salary and provide me with health insurance. It was something I am forever grateful for. When I left for the police academy in May of 2000, I left behind a job that I love and a boss that I love working for and with. By that time, he was one of my closest friends and a mentor, and someone I think back on this day, and I am thankful he gave me and so many others the start to their many successful careers in public safety. Dan McPherson provided the start for men and women that went on to work for the following agencies: Boxford Police, Georgetown Police, Marblehead Harbor Master Department, the Bend, Oregon Fire Department, the Gloucester Fire Department, acting as Deputy Chief, the Rowley Police Department, the Dutch National Police in the Netherlands, the Burlington Fire Department, the Canton Fire Department, the Salem Fire Department, Salem Police, serving as lieutenants, sergeants, and patrolmen. 2 worked for MedFlight. 1 as a nurse. Rockport Police, United States Air Marshals, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Merrimack Police Department, the Essex County Sheriff's Department, Beverly Harbor Master Department still has 13, or they had 13 assistants hired by Dan. The Beverly Fire Department has 6 firemen serving as lieutenants and firefighters. And the Beverly Police Department has 15 officers that work for Dan, came up through Dan, serving as lieutenants, sergeants, patrolmen, and reserve police officers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, officer. Definitely appreciate your time, and yeah. There you go, officer. You asked for applause at the end, and you get it. That was very moving, and thank you for being here and sharing with us. As I said, I want to stick with this public hearing. I do need to just recess one other, because we had recessed it to 8:45, and then I want to see this one through. So I will reopen our public hearing on Order 41, and would entertain a motion to recess that to 9:05.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. So we'll recess that public hearing on Order 41 to 9:05 and resume with our public hearing on Order 14. And Officer Knight, you are second speaker signed up.
Honorable City Council, my name is Ryan Knight, and I had the pleasure of working for Daniel McPherson from 2012 to 2020. I'm currently a police officer in the city of Beverly, and I owe the start of my public safety career to Dan in the Harbor Master Department. I started at 18 years old without a clue of what I wanted to do with my life. Dan took a chance and hired me at a young age, which taught me a lot about teamwork and discipline. It started out by running the septic boat, also known as the pump boat. Excuse me. Although it seemed like a crappy job, it opened up more opportunities than I think I could have ever imagined. During my second season, Dan promoted me to start to work on the patrol boat, and I will say, leaving the pump boat sure didn't stink. I was driven by Dan's commitment to his position as the harbor master and wanted to continue to work to establishing my own career. My hard work at the harbor master office did not go unrecognized. Dan rewarded me when he sponsored me to attend the Reserve Police Academy. This academy helped me become a reserve police officer with the town of Boxford at the young age of 21. At 22, I was able to attend the full-time police academy and become a full-time police officer with the town of Boxford. None of this would have been possible without the recommendation from Dan and the impactful lessons I learned from him and his department. Even though my availability became scarce, I was always able to make time to help Dan out whenever it was, whether it was covering a shift or anything. Working with him was a pleasure. In 2020, I transferred to the Beverly Police Department, where I was required to step down from the Harbor Master Department. This is one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, as working for Dan became a place built with trust and respect. Although my new career removed me from the Harbor Master office, it never stopped me from visiting. Every week I would go down and visit Dan, as he became a friend and remained a mentor. We would share lunch and talk about our life and our careers. When I asked him for advice, I know I could lean on him for support. To this day, I still find myself looking for Dan's car, driving down the Harbor Center, just out of an old, developed habit. Dan was a man of integrity and character. He was hard on us employees, and he was hard on himself when things did not go as planned. For many years, we were stationed in the old McDonald's building while we patiently, yet eagerly, waited for the completion of the new building. Dan never complained about being stationed in an abandoned fast food joint, but instead he adapted. He was able to adapt to any situation with no visible panic or stress and made things look easy or well managed. Dan was extremely committed to the public safety of the city. I never once saw him without a radio. Heck, even when he wasn't working, he was always listening, and you best believe we all worked like he was always watching because no call could ever sneak by him. You would be reminded of this by a simple text message or a phone call checking in on you, even when he was halfway across the world in Ireland. The lessons, friendship, and qualities I gained from Dan in this department are irreplaceable. He instilled trust in me and many others at such a young age. He molded me into the successful professional I am today. I feel as I will never be able to repay him for the lifelong knowledge and skills he taught me. This department only developed my career path, but it's also where I met some of my closest friends, including my wife. Some of his former employees before my time told me they would not be where they are now without Dan's guidance. Most of these former employees are sitting here in this room tonight. I'm sure each one of them could come up here and tell their own version or experience working for Dan, but one thing I can assure you, that everyone will conclude their story with saying, without Dan's support and life lessons, they may not be where they are here today. For many reasons listed above, I'm requesting from the council to please approve naming the Harbor Master Building to the Daniel G. McPherson Harbor Center. By naming this building after Dan, it would be in great honor of his life and dedication to the citizens of Beverly. With this meaningful change, Dan will forever be remembered and safely anchored at the Harbor Center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Officer Knight, for sharing with us also about your experience and working with Dan McPherson. Are there other members of the public who are not signed up? Chief, please, Chief LeLasher.
Thank you, Madam President, City Council. But just very briefly, when I came here in 2013 as chief, Dan worked under my command as a direct report. Took me into the McDonald's building and showed me that building and what he was working out of, and then we worked in the transition to the Brown building. Dan made that happen. He put his mark on that building. He's the one that designed, made it a professional building, and it works the way it does today because of Dan. So I feel it's extremely important, or should be named after Dan, for the reason of moving out of the old McDonald's. Again, if you get down in the basement there and saw what Danny kept there, it was amazing. Into the new building, which he designed, he put his mark on, so I think it's appropriate to have his name on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank everybody who's here tonight. I want to thank Councilors Rotundo and Feldman and the solicitor for the good work on creating the ordinance that we really kind of didn't have in place. I'll just say, I got to know Dan first before I was mayor, fairly long before that, because I think a lot of you folks know there were hundreds and hundreds of kids and thousands of parents who are incredibly grateful for Dan's passion for soccer, because he did a ton of coaching. I think I first met him when he was coaching my nephew, who absolutely loved him. So getting to know Dan over the last several years in the context of him being one of our department heads, I've got to say he's universally respected and loved by everybody he worked with. None of what I'm hearing tonight or what I've heard from some of you folks over the course of the last year is at all surprising. Knowing what a professional he was, knowing how much honor he felt in the work he did, and how important he knew the mentoring and the guidance that he was able to provide was. I'd also say it's a lot of people are very professional. A lot of people can mentor, and I think you guys and some of you know him a lot better than I was able to get to. Although I loved spending time with him. You know that it was also the fact that he has such a good and such a big heart that he poured into all the work he did. So there's so much to say on Dan's behalf. There's so much that I know any one of you could get up and say. The logistics here are that the city council will take a vote, and my sense is there's a lot of support for this, and then it'll come to me. And I just want to say that if you do that, I will be more than honored to sign this. And I think we'll all be really happy and feel that honor to be able to attend a ribbon cutting when his name goes up. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other members of the public who would like to speak in this public hearing? So fellow councilors, typically I know it's our pattern to refer things back to subcommittee. My sense is with this one, we don't need to do that and don't need to make everybody here in the room wait to see what's going to happen. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve order number 14 to name the building in honor of Daniel G. McPherson.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 8-0. And I think we heard from a few of those who are here tonight, but certainly it seems very appropriate to me to have that posthumous standing ovation for Harbor Master Dan McPherson, a life incredibly well lived and a life of immense service. So thank you again, councilors, for bringing it forward. Thank you to our Beverly Police and firefighters who are here with us tonight, and thank you to Dan's family for sharing him with this community as well. I would entertain a motion to sorry, we need to quickly do one bit of housekeeping. I'm going to reopen public hearing on order 42. I would entertain a motion to recess that to 9:15.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now, we'll recess order 42 to 9:15. I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Juggling.
It's been a while since. We do have just a couple minutes
Badly.
I won't.
before we go to our next public hearing, and I think
Gotta talk roads before we can do that.
I'll call the city council back to order following our recess. We do have a few minutes before we go to our next public hearing that's been recessed to 9:05, and so I think in that amount of time, Ms. Kent, let's see if we can get through some of the communications from other city officers and boards, please.
Order number 64 from President Flowers, reappointments for Mr. Richard Benevento and Mr. John Lozado as council representatives of the Parking and Traffic Commission. The mayor has requested a waiver of residency in the past and would recommend that we honor this request.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 65 from Solicitor Williams, home rule petition regarding amendments to the 1995 City of Beverly Home Rule Charter, and order numbers 75A and 276 of 2022.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 66 from Solicitor Williams, non-substantive changes to the draft charter amendments reflected in order 75A and 276 of 2022.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 67 from Solicitor Williams, of authorization to execute agreement with cell signaling technology as contemplated by previously approved order number 110 of 2021. Amendment to City Zoning Ordinance IR Overlay Zoning District.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. And that brings us to 9:05. So we will pick up with our public hearing on order number 41. And this was recessed to 9:05. And you already read the order. Thank you for that. You did a great job.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Ailes, we'll go right to you. And this is, Order 41 is for a $560,000 grant from Seaport Economic Council for project work at the 4 Cabot Street parcel with a match.
Thank you very much. I think the correspondence really speaks for itself. This is a second grant related to that parcel. The first was to purchase the formerly known as Rowan's parcel. This grant will allow us to make improvements in addition to some funds that are left over from the previous grant. Happy to answer any questions. Commissioner Collins is here as well if there are any specifics about the parcel that you may have questions about.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes, and I do just want to mention if there are members of the public watching or listening who want to speak in this public hearing, those sheets are still in front of our city clerk, and you can sign up at any point. Councilor Rand.
Thank you so much. I support this, receiving this grant and the work down there, and I also just would like to know what process you're undergoing to determine how this money will be used.
Yep. So the grant actually had us, required us to submit a preliminary budget for how the funds would be allocated. There's a couple different components to it, and Commissioner Collins can add to this, but in general, there's certainly some additional permitting work that is needed related to being a waterfront, DEP waterways, Chapter 91 license, things of that nature. There's also some work required for engineering, design associated with the parcel, building demo, as well as parking lot construction. And the parking lot construction also involves some improvements to the surrounding sidewalk and pedestrian access areas.
Councilor Rand, follow-up?
Follow-up, thank
And then we'll go
you.
to Councilor
Okay, so you mentioned design. At what point will you be finalizing design, and is there opportunity for any engagement in what's going into that design, or are we just getting a parking lot and sidewalks?
Commissioner Collins, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for having me here. You know, obviously, this purchase of this property, there was a singular opportunity. I know the council has supported that, we appreciate that. It's our only chance to really acquire waterfront property that's contiguous with our existing Daniel G. McPherson Harbor Center, which is, I'm thrilled to hear that. Dan was a great coworker, a great friend, and we miss him dearly. And, you know, it was in the middle of a fairly serious snowstorm when we got the news that we had lost him. It was truly heartbreaking. We'll miss him for forever. So I'm glad that I'll be able to think of him when we're down there. There's a couple of components where we are working with one of the engineers that we have, that is one of the preeminent waterfront engineers in the Commonwealth that has helped us out with a number of different projects down there. And we actually have 3 different Seaport Economic Council grants that are going into this part of the parcel. One of which is 3 grants ago is dealing with the transient fishing, the idea of a transient fishing float to try to give the fisher there's no polite way to say that. Recreational
Yeah.
fishermen, someplace to fish without casting over boats, casting into the fairway, and also maybe it provides some additional transient slips to encourage some visitors to the waterfront. So the 2 components would be the parking lot and the associated landscape architecture of that. We're really trying to maximize parking down there, not at the total cost of pave everything. You can see, if you've seen inside the new restaurant down there, it is unbelievable inside. It's really a treasure for the coastline and for Beverly. And that should serve as momentum to try to really solidify the waterfront. So we'll be working with our engineering firm on the design of the parking lot, but really a lot of the focus is on how can we serve that transient boating population and the coastline fishing population with another set of floats and piers. The property we acquired already contained with it a properly licensed pier with all the federal Chapter 91 and whatnot, the waterways permits already in place. But that was designed to be served from only that parcel because that property owner owned a very narrow strip of land. We have a little bit more flexibility, and I think we can come up with a much more beneficial design that will integrate better with the entire coastline there for the pier. But we're just in the process of essentially hiring them. Once the grant's approved, we get a contract in place, and we'll have some time to talk about what the design will actually look like down there. There's some study first that has to happen to try to identify what are the potential uses and what's the best way to serve that, and then that'll lead into a design phase where we'll have some open dialogue around that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo.
Quick question, Commissioner. Do you have an estimated timeline of when the parking area will be completed? Is it this year you think it would be completed?
We're really hoping to get something on the parking side of it, the upland side of it, ready for the boating season, end of May, June, something like that. That's what our sincere goal is. Maybe we can't finish everything, but we know that it's a very, very busy place, which is great. That's what we want to see, and the parking is desperately needed. So we're working now on doing some hazardous material surveys. It's an older building, so we assume there's always some asbestos in it. So we're trying to work through, we actually just got the report today telling me where it is so we can tear it down safely. And so then as soon as we raise the building, even just getting it gravel, that would afford us some parking if we want to leave it in a flexible space for now. But just getting the building down would provide us with almost 24 more parking spaces right off the bat without finalizing anything. So one way or another, there'll be additional parking down there for the harborfront this boating season.
Just one quick follow-up. When you said raising the building, is DPS doing that, or are you having a contractor do that project?
As it turns out, as we would expect in a building like this, an older commercial building, the roof has asbestos in the asphalt mastic on the roof. That's normal. It's not particularly hazardous because it's in mastic, but you still have to have it removed by a specialist company. So we'll probably have somebody else we absolutely will have somebody else do the roof demo. Then there's not much left. We're in the process now cleaning out any loose stuff in the building, furniture and whatnot, casework that we can get rid of. And so then all you've got left is a little bit of tin on the roof and some cinder block wall. So literally it'll be down in a day.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm very supportive of this, and as you mentioned, there's definitely a need for parking, and you answered my question. 24 parking spaces approximately is what we're looking at.
That's what we're hoping for, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bowen.
Thank you. Also very supportive and excited to see the work moving ahead, and was just wondering if we could get a little bit more of a breakdown of how much funding is available overall, left over from the previous grants and matches, and with this anticipated new money, and kind of roughly the breakdown of what's going towards what. It was helpful to get that list of types of funding.
So the previous grant, which was for purchase and costs associated with the purchase of the land, there's $205,000 worth of the initial grant and match component. And then this additional amounts will equal just over $900,000 available. And then there's obviously that other piece that Commissioner Collins mentioned related to the transient floats and stuff, that will have some ability to absorb some costs associated with some of the design and permitting and construction of that, I assume, as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers the first part, and then the second part was sort of that 900,000, how much is demo, how much is design work for what's next, how much is parking lot construction?
Well,
obviously not down to the penny, but just.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you roughly the total project budget of this grant that's before you this evening of $700,000, consisting of the grant and the match components. 55 grand of it in permitting, and these are rough ballparks too. 55 grand in permitting, 133 in engineering, about 60 grand in building demo, and then about 400 in parking lot construction and other, site improvements.
Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Any other questions or comments from the council on this one? Are there any members of the public who want to speak on this one? Mr. Perry, any comment from you on this one?
Thank you, Madam President. Very quickly, I wrote to you over the weekend. This conforms to our financial policies. It's consistent with our prior practice of doing this. It sounds like the council supports it from a policy perspective. We will be starting to tap into our free cash. I gave you a reconciliation of what will occur should you pass all the transfers tonight. We start the free cash at $9.9 million and change. If you pass this and the next one we'll talk about in a few minutes, it'll bring our free cash down to $8.9 million, and all that's consistent with what we normally do with free cash. Madam President, I would recommend adoption of the transfer proposal. It's also a good idea, in my view, when we get matching grants, it reduces the cost to the taxpayers of the city, and it's a wise decision. So for all those reasons, I recommend adoption of the proposal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Councilors, any questions for Mr. Perry? All right, then we will close this public hearing on order number 41 and refer that back to the Committee on Finance and Property for discussion and further action. And that brings us to 9:15, so we will reopen our public hearing on order number 42. Ms. Kent already read it, and you did a great job. Mr. Ailes, this is a request for a transfer of $850,000 from the city's certified free cash balance to be placed in the city's road and sidewalk fund to support design work for Phase 2 Brimble Ave. The floor is yours.
Perfectly stated. That's what it is for. $850,000 transfer into the Road and Sidewalk Project Fund. This will fund design work, which will cover roughly bring designs to about 10% completion on the Phase 2 overpass work at Brimble Ave and Dunham Road. We have other members of the administration, including the mayor here, to talk about specifics about the project. However, before I relinquish the microphone, from a financial perspective, as Mr. Perry's memo indicates, this would come from free cash. This, along with the other two, the other one we just spoke about, would bring it down to what did you say? 8.9 million remaining in free cash. So I'd request your approval of this order, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. Councilors, any questions on this one? Councilor Feldman, this is your ward.
I would
Let's go
just
to you
like
first.
to start off with thanking the administration and for finding the after 20-plus years of trying to make this happen, this is a long overdue first step in the right direction that really has been promised to these residents in this area. And it's in Ward 5, but it's not a Ward 5 issue alone, because as anyone knows, if you have to go to the North Shore Music Theater, or if you have anything up at Dunham Ridge, you have to go down a small artery that is not intended for this amount of traffic. And it's really become, Ward 5 has Cherry Hill, we've got the airport, we've got Dunham Ridge, and it's increasingly becoming an economic factor in the city in terms of the development and the corporate tax base that we have. So it's really unfair for the residents of Ward 5 to bear the burden of all of that traffic additionally, and to have an exit off of 128 to really get those cars that are coming to those new businesses wanting to develop there off the road and right into the office park up there would be a huge benefit for our kids that go to school in the area, our people that are commuting within Beverly down Brimble, and it's really critical for Beverly to be able to move forward with any development back there anytime. For example, the 55 plus affordable housing, direly needed project in the city. It's been expressed that we don't want more condos and housing downtown by some. This is a perfect area for something like that, but you can't put more cars back there without more access on those roads. So this is a little overdue, but I'm happy that it's happening at all. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rotundo.
Mr. Perry, a couple of questions for you, and as our budget analyst.
Mr. Perry?
Thank you. The $850,000, which I understand the concept. I mean, I know the city did that for the Bridge Street project. They used that money to get the design, moved it up the tip list, which allowed us to get a lot more funding. But I also know over the last few days, I've received phone calls in regards to this transfer. And I think part of it was maybe the not understanding that this $850,000 isn't going to be taking money out of the Hall Whitaker Bridge or the Kernwood Bridge because it's a separate thing. But I also, one comment that was made, and to reference it, how long this has gone back, was under Mayor Vitale, and this person kind of referred as the Fantasy Bridge, and that's when he was referring to the whole Hall Whitaker Bridge. So the question is, the $850, just to make sure to clarify, this is city money that has no effect on the Hall Whitaker Kernwood Bridge. Those are state projects that will still get funded. But the other question I have is, could we take this $850,000 and put it towards sidewalk and roads within the city? Because that's also the other phone call I believe every councilor gets a phone call on. So I look at it as the $850,000 is for here and now, money that could be used for roads and sidewalks, or the $850 to be invested for 10, 15 years down the road. Or, we don't know how long this project could go through. So,
thank you, Councilor. Let me see if I can address some of your thoughts there. First off, these are funds not being taken, you're correct, they are not being taken away from the bridge, the repair. That's going to be mostly state money, I believe some federal money too. We may, down the road, augment that, but the bottom line to it, no, it doesn't take away from repair work associated with the Hall Whitaker Bridge. We're taking this out of free cash. And for those not familiar with it, the project does meet, we've had this in our capital expenditure planning, which is all part of that, and if you were to approve this tonight, it would certainly conform to the financial policy of the city, so all that's good. So the answer is, yeah, it doesn't affect really the Hall Whitaker Bridge at all. With regard to your question, can it be used for other purposes like roads and sidewalk, the answer would be yes. If the administration were to come before the council and ask, let's say, $850,000 to use it for roads and sidewalk, that would conform to our financial policies and would certainly be, if the administration wanted to do it and the council wanted to approve it, that would be appropriate in nature. There would be nothing wrong with that. I know there's been some dialogue and some questions asked of me about roads and sidewalks in general. And if I may, I'm glad actually Commissioner Collins here. He knows this stuff way better than I do. But I've had some opportunity to spend some time looking at it. Actually, Council Bowen and I was kind enough, I thank Commissioner Collins' staff. They were good enough to kind of host us there a month or so ago. We have, in my view, from, this is strictly financial, the commissioner can speak to it way better than I. If I had to guesstimate, we have in excess of over $100 million of road repair and sidewalk repair in the city if we just were to write a check and make it all happen. And the property, from my experience of dealing with, you really want to replace about 2% of your infrastructure, which means every 50 years you fix the roads and the sidewalks. If we were to do that properly, if we were to properly fund all that stuff, in my view, looking at the numbers and number crunching I've done, we would probably need to appropriate somewhere between $7 to $8 million a year to properly take care of the roads and sidewalks in the city. And under the laws of Proposition 2.5, that's completely impossible. We cannot afford that unless you're going to eviscerate, quite frankly, the schools. There's no getting around it. So this is not unique to Beverly, though. This is going on in every municipality in the country, let alone the Commonwealth, because it's so expensive to do roads and sidewalks that they do the best they can. Now, from my observations, and I guess I'm wearing more of my management hat, I think the commission does a pretty good job on this stuff. He actually spends a little bit more money repairing this thing because he does a better job than you see in other municipalities. He'll do deeper roads. He does a better job in the engineering of the sidewalks, at least from my experience. And while it may cost a tad more, it's going to last a heck of a lot longer the way they do it. So the bottom line to it is it's almost impossible to properly fund this, whether it's Beverly or anywhere else. I can tell you that from my observations of other communities, we're ahead of the curve as far as our investment on this stuff. I think the administration does a pretty good job. As you know, we approved $2.5 million last year, or this current fiscal year. We augmented that with a little over $1 million in Chapter 90, and I think we had some grant money in there too. So I know we've had some dialogue about this. You were interested in this, but the bottom line to it is I think the city's doing as well as it can within the confines of its budgetary process to handle these matters.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions from the council? Counselor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on both Councilor Feldman and Councilor Rotundo's comments, I've been following the Brimble Ave project a long time myself, and certainly aware that this is something that is needed at some point in the future. But to Councilor Rotundo's point, this is the number one issue we all hear about every single day, and I appreciate Mr. Perry's analysis on the 7 to 8 million, and I don't think anyone wants to eviscerate the schools, but what I will say is the rate that we're repairing, it's not keeping up with the need. In Ward 6 this last year, we had just one side street repaved, and I think if we're going to be putting money through the Road and Sidewalk Fund for road and sidewalk projects, I'd like to see it used on maintenance and repair, and at least understand what the plan is moving forward, because I can't go to my residents and say this is going to be the process moving forward in terms of the rate of repair. It's just not, it's not enough. And so I know it's because we spent a lot of money in the 90s and 2000s on schools and other things and got behind, but we need to figure out a plan to get this stuff in a better place, is my opinion.
Thank you, Counselor.
Madam President, just to close, I don't believe there's a public hearing. As you know from my memo, I would recommend adoption of the proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Rowan.
Thank you. In sort of thinking through the trade-offs that we're always making between upfront investments that allow us to do things in the future that are really important, things that allow us to leverage additional funding from other sources, I really like that way of thinking. So, in general, want to be supportive of using free cash to advance those kinds of priorities. But it also always comes at some cost, and like an opportunity cost, whether that is immediate spending on immediate needs or other long-term spending. And so I've already asked a little bit. We had a little bit of discussion sort of offline, but this project is mentioned in our capital expenditure plan, but it's mentioned as something that will take forever and not include city funding, is sort of how it's described. And so what worries me is there's obviously something that's sort of shifted in the world that makes this seem like the right use of funds for right now. And that means that everything else that is programmed in the capital expenditure plan as things we would use free cash for in the next couple of years moves down the list because this money gets spent elsewhere. And so from a planning perspective, that happens sometimes, like things change and you want to be nimble and react to that. But it worries me that if we knew that it would cost somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million to do some initial design work that would give us access to state funding later on, and this is a high priority and has been a high priority for a long time, why do we not have a long-term funding plan for, okay, the next time we have $850,000 available, this is going to be the next one up? And so would love to hear that story, and would love to hear what's new and different with the list I pulled was the North Beverly and Farms fire station roofs. It's an $800,000 project estimate. Obviously, they're placeholder numbers in our capital expenditure plan, not real numbers. That was listed as being needed somewhere in the 2 to 5 year range for the last couple of years. Remaining work at the library, the central fire station, upcoming work on school roofs, a roof on the salt shed, additional work at the senior center. Maybe some of those things have happened. We had operational funds that were available. We've gotten grants. But just without sort of hearing what's shifted, it's hard to commit funding that we won't get to spend on anything else when we know those other needs were programmed to happen sometime soon. So for me, that's the big question, is what changed that will gain so much by making this expenditure now, and what's changed that we won't really lose out on appropriate maintenance of our existing infrastructure if we push back plans that we had.
Is there some, Mr. Ailes? Thank you.
So why don't I start? There was a lot there, right? When we submit a capital expenditure plan to you all, it's a kind of rehashing of everything we know is going on, everything that we know we try to think potentially could happen, and we try to gain some kind of assembly to it all and try to time things up right. That's not to say all of those projects or some of those projects are moving at different paces. And as opportunities present themselves, sometimes those priorities shift around to your point, take advantage of, in this case, the potential to get in line for some much larger funding sources that can help get this project to a point where we can actually see it taking place, right? Up until this point, even when I started almost 10 years ago, it was a $30 million project back then that we just would, how is the city going to possibly pay for this in its operating budget? But we've been successful in other instances, like the 1A project, like the Bridge Street project, like the multiple intersection project that we've just completed, by taking the opportunity as it presents itself and investing a little bit of money. I know it's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the project cost, it's a little bit of money up front to get the design work to a point where the state can say, oh, now I get what you're trying to do. Yeah, we're on board. That's a good project. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. There is also some changes to your point about what's changed over the last 6 months to a year that I think the mayor's getting up to talk about, but because I see him moving this way. But it definitely has to do with how the state is viewing the project now as opposed to how it was viewing it 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. So, Mayor, was that why you were getting up? Yeah, okay.
Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Mr. Ailes. Thanks, Madam President. And to your question, Councilor Bowen, I think, as you're asking it, I'm thinking through, how does this shift? It's been the case for some time that when it comes to TIP projects, some to all of the design costs are put up by the communities. And so, the thought that this might get done without TIP funding was where we were several years ago, because in part, MassDOT wasn't seeing the highway safety and efficiency, potential. The project then, and for many years, was anticipated to be an overpass and interchange that would be sited somewhere from 128 northbound, kind of just beyond and behind the rest stop. So just to orient ourselves and anybody watching, between Brimble Ave and Centerville, northbound, you have the rest stop. For years, the thought was that the overpass and interchange would be just past the rest stop and over towards kind of the front driveway of Dunham Ridge. And that was a hard sell with MassDOT, right? It was much closer to the Brimble Ave interchange in both directions, and the on-ramping, off-ramping conflict points were problematic. At that time, we were kind of left with trying to promote the project mostly as an economic development project. There was a sense in the Baker administration, in the early years of that administration, which timed up with us being here, that there were opportunities for public-private partnerships to fund these kind of projects. That hasn't really materialized. We've looked, we looked for years for ways to try to make those pieces reality. All of that, and a lot of conversations with the Cummings team that owns Dunham Ridge, you take all that together, we started looking much more closely at how to site somewhere different. And that, as you folks know, we've talked some about this, the engineering team that we brought on a couple of years ago that we're looking to do the next chunk of work with here, we together, and I think a big assist on this goes to Commissioner Collins, we together started looking up to the crest of the hill, which brought us more central between the Centerville and Brimble Ave interchanges, which started to make the case to MassDOT that this can fit better as a transportation project. This can pull a lot of kind of highway destination to one site, one campus, traffic off of local roads, begin to ease the burden on those highway interchanges and have something, more appropriately sited between. So it took some time really to get to this point. It was interesting, I think a natural progression in how, how we were moved to think differently and look differently. I think that, may help to give an answer to your question, which is, makes all the sense in the world to ask and need to have answered. I hope that's helpful in how we've kind of evolved in looking at it. And we are really hopeful at this point that the investment that we're asking you to make, with us of the community's funds can get us to that point where MassDOT will, come with us and get this onto the tip. As far as if we're successful with that, how long it will take, I'm hoping it's less than what Councilor Rotundo said a few minutes ago. But, it's clearly something that is of great importance to the community at large and to a section of town that's really been overburdened for a long, long time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Bowden.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful, and I think is the story we need to be able to tell if we make that transfer. So I guess the second part of that, and apologies because in very long questions the second part usually gets lost, is just some reassurance that the other projects we might be anticipating free cash would have assisted with this year or next, that there is a plan for them still to move forward on the pace they need from a maintenance perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Obviously, when we move one, up in line a bit, then something else is going to wait. And we're having an ongoing conversation about the 6 school roofs and HVAC systems. And, I think what we know, and I don't want to overstep because Commissioner Collins is really, his expertise is in these areas, but if you look at straight numbers, we're at about 25 years on the McEwen School roof. And each of the other elementary schools, McEwen was built as an elementary, we know it's used differently now, but each of the other buildings are a year younger, a year younger, a year younger. Thus their roofs are. What we're finding is that by and large the roofs are wearing well and holding up well. And so they sit in the plan and we feel comfortable pushing them back some, continuing to monitor, and again, I don't want to overstep, so I'll stop there. Commissioner Collins isn't refuting me, because I want him to if I say something wrong. But you know, we're working that, and Mr. Ailes could probably touch on anything else on, you know, on that list. You know, these are the things we together work our way through. And you're right, we can't spend money on two places or on two things at the same time. So it's prioritizing and making these kind of decisions. But thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Feldman.
Thank you. If I may, through you, to answer your point, Counselor Bowen, sometimes with this project especially, I forget how intimately involved I am in knowing all the details of these things. So there's so much to this project, and that has been a long time in coming. But when it comes to the items on the capital plan, I just urge everyone to remember that almost all those other projects that you listed are under our purview that can get done or transferred within a year, because it's our municipal budget. Whereas something like this investment, this is just getting us started, so then we can have a timeline with the state. And the longer we delay that, the longer the timeline. We have much more control over the projects in the capital budget that have to do with, or the capital plan that have to do with our schools and our roads and our sidewalks, that we can make in short-term funding. And we just, every time we delay this, we delay by years, not just months. And that's why it's been delayed by decades to date. And that's why I'm asking for support now, because I have been incredibly supportive of projects in other wards. When a ward councilor tells me, my ward needs this needs to bring relief to my ward, I will always defer to a ward councilor when it comes to knowing what their constituents need and prioritizing that. And I would ask that the other councilors, if you have any other questions of me, I definitely know the constituents' needs. I've heard them since 2019 when I was going to every door on that road, and everyone in that neighborhood. This has been a long time in coming, so I ask for your support.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions or comments from the council on this one? And seeing no members of the public who are here to speak on this public hearing, I will close public hearing on order number 42 and refer that back to the Committee on Finance and Property for further discussion this evening. Ms. Kent, let's go to communications, applications, and petitions, please.
Order number 68 from National Grid, Plan 306-48523, to install conduits encased in concrete and all apparatus from pole 3124 to the property of 105 San Fonso Drive.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services, and we'll set a public hearing for that.
Order number 69 from Andrew Brown, the Director of the 4th of July Committee, a request for a waiver of the city's ordinance, Chapter 113-2, prohibiting possession of consumption of alcohol on a public way, public space, for a family picnic in the park on July 2nd, 2023 at Dix Park.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Let's take up unfinished business from a previous meeting before we break for committee.
Order number 24A from Glofsky, a withdrawal of a request to short-term parking at 480 Rantoul Street. And that's regarding order number 24-2023.
Thank you, which is being withdrawn. Last week, we alluded to a letter that was coming from the Parking Commission and Ms. Nguyen. I will just read that into the record. It will be attached to order 24A. And essentially, we're looking for a vote just to receive and place on file 24A, because 24 has been withdrawn. But here's the letter. Dear Honorable Council, at the request of the City Council made at the January 17th, 2023 meeting, the Parking and Traffic Commission, at their February 7th, 2023 meeting, reviewed and considered the request by Beverly Crossing to make an ordinance change allowing 15-minute parking along the frontage of the property at 480 Rantoul Street, where 2-hour parking is currently allowed. The Commission considered testimony from the applicant's attorney, George Solari, the city's parking control supervisor, and Sergeant Michael Henneberry, Beverly Police Department Traffic Division Supervisor, who is also a member of the commission. Following the discussion, members of the commission voted unanimously to not support the change of ordinance at this time. The commission noted that the developer of the proposed 480 Rantoul Street development requested and was granted a special permit from the planning board for relief from the parking requirements of the Beverly zoning ordinance to provide fewer on-site residential spaces than required. At that time, the developer contended that the parking supply proposed for residential units was sufficient. Based on research from the Beverly Police Department, on-street parking is being utilized by residents of 480 Rantoul Street. The applicant was advised to come back to the commission at a later date if they have collected data that demonstrates the current parking restrictions create an issue for new business. Likewise, the developer was advised to direct its tenants to utilize on-site parking versus occupying on-street spaces. Please feel free to contact Planning Director Darlene Nguyen if you have any questions regarding the commission's vote. Respectfully, Richard Benevento, Chair of Parking and Traffic Commission. So this will be attached to Order 24A, and I would entertain a motion to receive 24A and place it on file.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0, and thanks to the Parking and Traffic Commission for their consideration of this. Originally, we had sent 24 to them for further guidance. I would entertain a motion to take a break for some committee work.
Second.
Oh, I was gonna do it when we came back. Oh, sorry, all right. Ms. Kent's right. We should go to motions and orders. I apologize. So motions and orders, this is 279. This is the zoning changes that we had already made. And this is for final passage because these are zoning changes. As you know, we read them and voted. This is a vote for final passage tonight. So here are the votes as we took them. The first, approve the proposed amendments that would effectuate the elimination of the tall building overlay district by deleting the reference in sections 300-40D2F, 340D3F, and 340D5F, which allows a building height of up to 75 feet by special permit in a defined area of the CC district. Delete section 300-40G2 and hold as reserved, and eliminate reference in section 300-22A2 and section 300-40I to the associated tall building design guidelines. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So that carries 7-1. The second vote, as we had taken it, approve the proposed amendments that would reduce the maximum allowable height of buildings in the Cabot Street area by 1, adding in section 300-6A designation CC2 and Central Business Cabot. 2, adding a new section 300-6C, creating a new CC2 subdistrict as shown on map 22-056 zoning proposal overview. And 3, updating the official city zoning map accordingly, changing CC to CC/CC2 throughout the ordinance when it refers to both districts together, and amending the maximum building heights in section 300-40D building and area requirements to read as follows. 1, commercial uses, residential uses, or combined commercial residential uses on CC zoned lots with side and/or rear yards abutting a residential zoning district. F, maximum building height in CC District 55 when RHD is the abutting residential district. In CC2 subdistrict, 45 feet with no more than 4 stories. In both CC and CC2, 35 feet when RMD or R6 is the abutting residential district. 2, residential uses which do not abut a residential zoning district. F, maximum height in CC District 55 feet. In CC2 subdistrict, 45 feet with no more than 4 stories. 3, commercial uses which do not abut a residential district. F, maximum height in CC District 55 feet, in CC2 subdistrict 45 feet with no more than 4 stories. 4, commercial or residential uses within structures existing at the time of the adoption of this chapter. F, maximum height in CC District 55 feet, in CC2 subdistrict 45 feet with no more than 4 stories. 5, combined commercial residential uses on lots with side and/or rear yards which do not abut a residential zoning district. F, maximum building height in CC District 55 feet, in CC2 subdistrict 45 feet with no more than 4 stories. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. That carries 7-1. 3, approve the proposed amendment to section 300-37D9, reducing the maximum allowable height of buildings in the residential district RHD between Cabot Street and Rantoul Street from 55 feet to 40 feet. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's 5-2. 4, and there's 4A, B, C, D.
Yeah, there's one, 5-2-7.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's correct. I will restate. Can I just see all those in favor? All those opposed? It's my counting, not our voting. Thank you. It's 6-2. Thank you, Solicitor. That was the same hands raised, just poor counting on my part. Thank you for that. So 4A, not approve the proposed amendments to amend Article 15, Affordable Housing, Inclusionary Housing Ordinance as follows. In Section 300-103A, 300-103A1, 300-103A2, 300-103A3, 300-103C, and 300-104C to change 6 to 4. So all those in favor of not approving, this is one of those that was a, yeah, so a motion to approve as voted. Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
So all those in favor of not approving this change? All those opposed? Thank you. 8-0. 4B, approve the proposed amendments in section 300-104A1 and 300-104C, change 80% to 60%, and delete section 300-104A2 and 300-104A3, holding both as reserved. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 8-0. Carries. Thank you. 4C, approve the proposed amendments to delete section 300-108A1 and hold as reserved, and in section 300-114C, delete or off-site. This was the change that had to do with where inclusionary zoning housing units could be located. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 8-0. And 4D, approve the proposed amendments in section 300-114C1 and C2 and section 300-114E. Replace Essex County Registry of Deeds with Southern Essex District Registry of Deeds. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 8-0, and that was correction of a Scribner's error. Thank you very much. So that is for final passage this evening on the zoning amendments that we had taken up. And now, I would entertain a motion to take a break for some committee work.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. That carries 8-0. I would just remind all of us as counselors, if there's anything that's for more substantive conversation, we would do well to have that on a separate committee night. We will take up anything we can handle tonight on a time frame that is reasonable, especially for the public who's trying to follow. And we'll have legal affairs stay on BevCam, finance and property in the committee room, and public services on the bench. I know you heard me say it different, and I'm sorry.
I'm used to it.
Thank you, everybody.
See?
Thank you. Okay, call to order the Legal Affairs Committee. All right, let's look at, let's actually just go to order number 46, which is a reappointment for Timothy Creamer to serve as constable in the city of Beverly. Any questions or comments from the committee? I would accept a motion to approve order number 46.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Okay. Just want to keep everything in order here. Okay, we'll take order number 51, which is a request for approval of a 3-year mechanic garage space lease with 51 Park Street LLC. And any questions or comments from the committee? Councilor Rotundo.
Just, I believe it's the existing location, correct?
That's a
Mr.
good
Jeleno, is it
question.
the existing garage that they're at right now? Yes. So it's really just extending existing leases?
Will you talk into one of the microphones? Thank you. Please.
It's a new lease. We went out to an RFP. We had one respondent, but it is the same garage that the city has rented since 2010. The rent has not gone up since then. It's with Zampel family, and they've been great landlords, and we've been good tenants.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Question.
Okay, I would accept a motion to approve order number 51.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Absolutely.
We sent someone to you as a proposed appointment
Yes,
to, I think it was the parking and traffic. Dana Morton?
yes. I know Dana well.
So that should say Ms., not Mr.
I'm aware. Thank you.
If you folks can make that
I
correction.
appreciate that.
Thanks
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Okay, order number 64, which is a reappointment for Mr. Richard Benevento and Mr. John Lozado as the council representatives to the Parking and Traffic Commission. And this includes, just so we're clear, a waiver of residency requirement for Mr. Benevento. Any questions or comments from the committee?
That was just one comment on Mr. Benevento. We're very fortunate to have him on the parking and traffic, considering he's a traffic engineer, and I know I've called him many times, so I'm grateful we do have him and happy that we're able to
Thank you.
waive that.
Yeah, he is an expert. Anything else? No? All right, I would accept a motion to approve order number 64.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Okay. Now we're getting to the fun stuff here. So I would like to take up order number 65, which is the home rule petition regarding amendments to the 1995 City of Beverly Charter and orders number 75A and 276 of 2022. So this is the document that will go to our legislators.
Correct.
And Solicitor Williams, would you like to share something about it?
Sure, I
Thank you.
can. So this is the home rule petition. That is the culmination of all the work that started with the Charter Review Committee almost a couple of years ago now. And so this is the actual document that would go to the state legislature. You're correct that sort of in a very tedious fashion, as you may have noticed, explains what the changes are. What would accompany this is a compare changes document, a red line document, so that they can visually see what the changes are that the city council and the mayor have both approved. So yes, this document was drafted primarily in the initial stage by Marilyn Collins of the Marilyn Contreras of the Collins Center, who was here but apparently had to leave tonight, and then the law department, worked with her to finalize it. So this is written in accordance with the legislative drafting manual, which is why it's as boring and dry as it actually is. She and I have been through it multiple times, are confident that it reflects the changes approved by the city council and the mayor. I will say with the caveat, in Order 66, we made a few additional editorial changes that don't change the subject of the substance of the document whatsoever. Mr. Benson's here tonight to show you what those are in relation to the charter. If you would like us to, we can. They are articulated in what has become Order 66. So if it's your will or preference that we go through those with you, we can, but they're in here now. They're in Order 65. So
Okay,
I'll
I would
let you
just
make that
ask
call.
if it's sort of required that we vote on 66 before 65.
I think so, or you can just vote on 65 because it's in 65, right? So
Right,
these
okay.
changes in 66 are in 65.
Okay.
So if you approve 65, you
Sort of
can just
by
receive and
default.
place on file 66.
Okay.
It was just to highlight for you the short list of additional immaterial changes that we made.
Okay, I think probably, no, you're comfortable with them? Counselor Sweeney, you're comfortable? Okay.
Madam Chair, if I, very quickly, I kind of reviewed it myself.
Okay,
If it helps
Mr.
you,
Perry?
I'm comfortable with it as well. You know, I was in the other committee for financial stuff, but my recommendation is to pass it.
Thank you. Yeah, there was nothing substantive, and then I think the only one I had a sort of a hard time placing was interested was section 8.7, that's sort of dealing with gender. I thought that was, maybe seeing the red line might be helpful. That was the only one that stood out.
So I'm happy to speak to it and tell you what our thinking was.
That'd be great.
So currently, the language includes, why don't you go to that section? There it is. So that's what it currently looks like, 8.7.
Can you see that okay?
I can.
Okay.
So just removing gender entirely?
Yeah, so
which
our
I
thinking is
think
if
that's
it's
great.
gender neutral,
Yeah.
it's written as a gender neutral doctrine, and that actually injects gender
Gender,
into it.
yeah.
So if it's written correctly, which we think it is, to
Mm-hmm.
completely eliminate it by referring to subjects as opposed to pronouns, or in saying stuff in the passive or using they, that's not needed.
Right, good. I think that's an improvement.
Yeah.
If there could be another improvement made, you found it, so thank you.
And we did find chairman and moved it to chairperson.
Yes, I saw that too. Yeah, I could, after all that.
I know.
I mean, yeah, so thank you. I think these are great, great edits, amendments. So, okay, any other questions or comments then on order number 65, which is the home rule petition? Okay, I would accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Woo, home rule petition is. Jerry and Joan, keep your eye out.
They get the full council.
That is so exciting. Okay, good work on that. And so order number 66, as discussed, we can actually just receive and place on file. So, motion to receive and place on file order number 66.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Okay, let me write that down, hold on. Okay, and then moving on up to a totally separate issue. Order number 67 is the authorization to execute agreement with Cell Signaling Technology as contemplated by previously approved order number 110 of 2021, amendment to city zoning ordinance in the IR overlay zoning district. I guess I just want to make sure before we open this for discussion that, call to, I was like, I have 5 minutes? Is there a gong? Call to order committee of the whole, please. Thank you for counting for me. All right. I just want to get a sense from the committee, is this going to be a larger discussion? Should we move this to a future meeting?
I had one question that I asked the solicitor in an email, and she answered, so I'm pretty comfortable. I mean, this was something that was passed last year, and it seems
Yes.
more of a formality now at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Counselor
I just
Sweeney?
have a quick process question. I was actually on the
Okay,
planning
good.
board last year when we passed it, so I understand the content. This doesn't signal the start of any work at this point? It's just another step in
No,
finalizing?
this should have happened actually a while ago.
Okay, that's
So it
what
was
I
the
would've-
responsibility of cell signaling to record it. I recently became aware that they didn't, and so they went to record it, and the registry wants, even though it's really cell signaling, burdening their own land, the city's a party to the agreement. And so the Registry of Deeds wants to see something that says Mayor Cahill had the authority to sign it, even though it's being granted to our benefit. And so when the registry tells you to do something like that, you do it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That's my only question.
Anything else?
and in fact, we want it done, because the zoning change was made.
Yep.
Right, yeah. Is that, I mean, that seems like it might be a product of how many different communities they deal with too, and processes of.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, it's a
yeah.
good safety net.
Yeah.
It's better to err on the side of caution
Right.
than not. So,
Okay,
it's not a problem. It was included in the original order, which we gave to the registry, but they wanted a separate order that related specifically to the development agreement. So my
Okay.
view is, that's fine, let's just give them a separate order.
okay, perfect. I would accept a motion to approve order number 67.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye, motion passes. Moving right along. Okay. Oh, sorry, this goes with 67. Okay. Order number 69, a request for a waiver of the city ordinance, chapter 113-2, prohibiting possession of alcohol in a public way or public space at Dick's Park. This is for a July 2nd, 2023 picnic at the park. And they've gone through the process for making this request for the permit. Any questions or comments from committee members?
I don't. I mean, they went to the liquor board. Liquor board gives its conditions, and I'm familiar with the process, so I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. We have the ward counselor here through a committee of the whole. Do you have any thoughts about order number 69?
Yeah, so this is it's a new event that the 4th of July committee put on for the first time last year. It's intended to be a family-oriented event. I think with COVID, there were a lot of new families that came into the neighborhood, and the idea is to try to draw out a younger crowd, get folks involved in the community, and it was a really well-attended and good event last year, and in sort of the direction and spirit that I think we all would love to see festivities.
Okay.
So I would, request you to support it.
Thank you. Thanks for that input. It didn't sound like a familiar event to me, so it's good to
Yeah.
know that it is actually new and I wasn't just out of touch. Okay. All right. I would accept a motion to approve order number 69.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Okay. And then, this is, yep, that's it. Okay, that's all we have in front of us tonight. But I do want to share that we will be Legal Affairs will be meeting on March 20th, if we're all available, at 6:30 before our city council meeting, and take up appointments and also hopefully begin a discussion of order number 282, which is a letter regarding accessory dwelling units. And any other questions or comments from committee? Okay, great. Motion to adjourn motion to adjourn Committee of the Whole, please.
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Motion to adjourn Legal Affairs Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
That's great. I'll do that. Thank you. Call the full city council back to order following our committee work. And we will go to reports from committees. Ms. Kent.
Order number 37. The Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding an interdepartmental transfer of $315,000 to be used to support ongoing overtime needs within the fire department, purchase 2 new vehicles of the Department of Municipal Inspections, and cover some cost overage in the janitorial services as well as the city's insurance premiums. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve the request.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I'm going to ask Vice President Rotundo to switch seats with me on this one, and he'll call for the vote.
Okay, thank you. Madam President.
Thank you. So thank you to Vice President Rotundo. I asked him to switch with me on this one because I wanted just to have a moment to say something about it. So I appreciated all of the discussion that we had, and sometimes one of the odd things about sitting in that seat next to Ms. Kent is not being able to share some of my thoughts. And on this one, I wanted to. So I understand and appreciate all the discussion we had, and like many of the counselors up here, am fully supportive of everything that the money is being put towards, particularly, I guess I want to say particularly for me personally, to support our fire department. I think that's been an ongoing discussion since I got on the council, was the staffing of our fire department, building back towards fuller staffing, purchasing those trucks, and I'm appreciative of everything our fire department does. So I am fully supportive of that. My personal opinion, despite understanding what we talked about with Chapter 115, is my personal preference would be to look to some of those other line items, whether it be snow and ice, or talk about other options that might be available to us to fund them. So I wanted to be clear that my non-support for this particular order that I tend to vote against is not about the items that we are looking to fund. It's more about, I really would like to think fully about our Veterans Department, and I do understand that that line item for veterans benefits would be funded. But for me personally, I think it's important to me to stand on this one. So thank you for giving me a moment to speak, Vice President Rotundo.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Bowen?
Thank you. Just a brief comment to say that I plan to support this in this form, despite sort of the flip side of that reason, which is, really want to see the transfers happen and the budget lines that need filling be filled, and want to say loud and clear that that is with deep, deep reservations about how we plan and talk about that planning and communicate what budget lines mean, and where we pull from and where we leave space. And so going forward, would like to see future requests approached in that more holistic way, like the conversation that we had tonight.
Anyone else? No other questions or comments? Question comes of the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor? All those against? Motion carries 5-3.
Thank you very much, Vice President Rotundo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Also, thank you, Vice President Rotundo. You did better counting than I did on that last one that we had a split vote, so noted. Excellent work. Ms. Kent, we'll continue with reports from committees.
Order number 41, the Committee on Finance and Property, whom referred the matter regarding a grant for $560,000 from the Seaport Economical Council for project work at 4 Cabot Street parcel, have considered the matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve the request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 42, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a transfer request of $850,000 from the city's certified free cash balance to be placed into the city's road and sidewalk fund to support Phase 2 Brimble Ave Overpass Project, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. That carries 7-1.
Order number 52, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom referred the matter regarding a grant for $8,500 from the Department of Fish and Game Division of Marine Fisheries, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 58, Committee on Finance and Property, to whom referred the matter regarding a $15,000 cultural district incentive grant from the MCC, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 46, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter, a reappointment for Mr. Timothy Creamer to serve as constable in the city of Beverly, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this reappointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 51, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding request for approval of a 3-year mechanic garage space lease with 51 Park Street LLC, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Carries 8-0.
Order number 64, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding reappointments for Mr. Richard Benevento and Mr. John Lozado as council representatives on the Parking Track Commission, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve these reappointments.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. And thank you to Mr. Benevento and Mr. Lozado for their continued service as well.
Order number 65, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding home rule petition regarding amendments to the 1995 City of Beverly Charter and Order Numbers 75A and 276 of 2022, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. I just had a question about sort of how it was discussed in committee, and sort of the translation process into the home rule petition. It sounds like it was a collaborative process between the Collins Center and the solicitor's office and was cross-checked very thoroughly, but just wanted to confirm that this was sort of the final product, reflects everything that we had passed and is the last step through us, and that was sort of triple-checked for us, because I know from my own perspective, giving it Thursday and giving it to today, I was relying on that being checked by others. So wanted to confirm that that was how it was discussed in committee and came through.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rand, as chair of the subcommittee, I don't know if you would like to address that first, and then Solicitor, if you want to add anything.
Sure. I mean, this is the document that's going on to our legislators, and yes, I think even how many times the amendments had been triple checked, there were still amendments made that I think make it an even better document. So I think it's possible there's something else in there but this is a great document and ready to go, and follows, per the solicitor, a form that's very standardized for submitting a home rule petition.
Thank you, Counselor. Solicitor Williams, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you and your office and your team have put into that as well. Thank you, Counselor Bowen. Any other questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0, and that is an exciting milestone in this process. And I think thanks also, I'll just go back and begin at the beginning, but thanks to our Charter Review Commission as well, that began this process, and it's been a process to get there. Thanks to the Collins Center, to our budget analyst, Jerry Perry, for working on this as well, and of course to our solicitor's office and team.
Order number 66, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding non-substantive changes to the draft charter amendments reflected in orders 75A and 276 of 2022, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Receive and place on file.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to receive this and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 67, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding authorization to execute agreement with cell signaling technology as contemplated by previously ordered, that was approved, order number 110 of 2021, amendment to city ordinances, city zoning ordinance, IR overlay zoning district. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 69, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a request for a waiver of the city ordinance, Chapter 113-2, prohibiting possession of alcohol in a public way or public space at Dix Park. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 282, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a letter regarding accessory dwelling units. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
We didn't vote on that one.
Sorry.
That one's still in
Never mind.
subcommittee. Still in subcommittee
It's a tease.
of things to come.
Order number 45, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for Mr. Michael P. Collins, Commissioner of Public Services and Engineering, to serve on the Permanent Building Commission. Have considered said matter and begged leave to follow. There was a vote, a yes, a no, and an abstain.
I'd like to
Counselor
speak to
Feldman.
that. Perhaps Counselor Bowen would be so kind as to express some of there were some concerns around the structure of this commission and its existence, and I think that Counselor Bowen would be, if you wouldn't mind expressing those.
Solicitor Williams, are you?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay.
If we can, if we're allowed to.
I was going to say, I will see if we can.
Okay.
Counselor Bowen, if you wanted to elaborate at all.
Sure. So the Permanent Building Commission is listed in our charter. Originally sort of had one goal and purpose, which was really in-depth oversight of any buildings and facilities in the city. That obviously has evolved over time. The commission still exists on paper, hadn't really existed in practice for a while, has been reconstituted over the last year or so. We've approved a number of appointments to it. I don't know that they've actually met yet, but in theory, it exists and is being reconstituted. And the appointment that's in front of us now, and that if we do nothing on, we'll go through in a couple weeks before our next meeting, or if we approve tonight, goes through. If we don't approve, then doesn't, is for Commissioner Collins to sit on that committee. And separately from questions about whether the committee is still needed at all, to my mind, it is a committee that's supposed to advise and provide some, not real oversight, but just another set of sort of citizen input on and view into major capital assets in the city and new building plans. And so projects like the ones that we heard about earlier today, it's another group besides this group that hears about those projects, gets to ask questions about those projects, gets to provide citizen input to those projects. And I feel that having the commissioner as a key input to that committee and liaison with that committee and really guiding force behind the projects themselves is appropriate and how things should be. But feel like the goal of that committee is to have citizen appointees. The charter language asks for 6 mayoral appointees approved through the council and 1 school committee appointee. And I think the intention there is to have that balance between school buildings and other buildings and people who have different interests and who can sort of look at these projects from different perspectives and add something. In practice, again, it's not a very active role. So in some ways, it's not something I feel super strongly about, but to my mind, the appointment of the head of the department that does most of the work on these buildings is not an added value. And using that seat to not have another citizen representative is a negative thing in my mind. So with great respect for Commissioner Collins's work, don't feel like this is the right position. So I was the one voting against recommending that the council approve this appointment.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Feldman.
I'd also just like to say that I am very appreciative of Councillor Bowen's thoughtfulness in this matter because I hadn't truly considered it. But up until this point, the members that we have put on the Permanent Building Commission, it's in such almost a new phase because it's been defunct for so long that even the members that are going onto it are like, I'm not sure what this is. And for this moment in time, I think it would be unfair to the commission to not have Commissioner Collins as a part of the group at this point in time. But Councillor Bowen's points are well taken in that if it's supposed to be the type of body that has an additional level of oversight, then if we're putting people that are part of an administration on those commissions, moving forward, it's something to consider and think about. So at this point in time, I think that they're really looking for guidance that only Commissioner Collins would have in this moment in time. But I want to be mindful and cognizant of the fact that we are bringing this up now, moving forward with commissions and who those positions should go to in the future. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you. The reason I was just conferring with Ms. Kent is that I actually have just a procedural question, and I guess I'll perhaps ask Solicitor Williams if I may. In terms of something coming out of subcommittee with a yes, a no, and an abstention, I'm not sure. I'm questioning if it can come out of subcommittee like that. If abstentions count effectively as no votes for the count.
Well, so it's a recommendation, right? So a subcommittee could recommend to not approve it. And the council could still vote however it wants. It's just a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
That's how we took it. That's
so the
why
motion failed.
That I was going to say.
Your
So
motion failed.
with the abstention, the motion.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Councillor St. Hilaire.
Yes, I guess not fully sitting in on the conversation that was discussed earlier. I guess my point of view on this is there is a permanent buildings committee that exists, and per the charter, the mayor has the authority to appoint to that commission, and here we have in front of us his appointee. I don't see anything wrong with us approving that. I mean, if we don't like the idea of the committee, I think there's a whole nother line of work that would need to be done to review the charter and remove that. But it exists, it's before us as an appointee, and I would support doing that. Mr. Collins does excellent work, and I value his work, and I don't see anything wrong with approving it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, just to echo Councilor St. Hilaire and Councilor Feldman's comments. I think, given that this committee is now just ramping up its work, and it's what I believe will be a benefit to the city to have, as Councilor Bowen mentioned, more citizen input on some of our larger building projects, it's important to me that we have the expert opinion of Commissioner Collins in the room during those meetings. And so I can understand the points that Councilor Bowen was making, but given the circumstances, I think it's reasonable to have Commissioner Collins, who is the most intimately involved with the day-to-day details of these projects, sit on that committee, at least for the time being. And then when the appointment lapses, we can, as a body, reconsider that.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions or comments on this one from counselors? Okay. So I would make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Commissioner Collins to the Permanent Building Commission Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. And all those opposed? So that's 6-2, motion carries. Thank you.
Order number 53, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding a proposed 2023 member rate schedule for the Beverly Golf and Tennis Club. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. That carries 8-0. Thank you.
Order number 63, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding Department of Public Services positions. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve these requests.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 68, relating to National Grid. Committee on Public Services, to whom, refer the matter, set a public hearing on April 3rd, 7:30 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order, recommending to set that public hearing for April 3rd, 7:30 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries 8-0. Thank you. So we will have that public hearing at our April 3rd meeting at 7:30 p.m. All right, thank you, Ms. Kent. That brings us to the end of our agenda for the evening. Mr. Perry,
President,
you're at the podium.
My sincere apologies. I may have missed it, and I apologize. Did we pass order 41? I didn't hear it, but maybe I missed it.
We did.
Did we do 41?
I am pretty sure I have it as an 8-0 approve.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank
My
you. No, it's good. It's good to check. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
It was approved.
Okay. So I do have just a couple announcements and reminders. The first is, as you heard Mr. Perry allude to earlier this evening, the Finance and Property Subcommittee, as well as Committee of the Whole, will have a meeting next Monday, the 13th, at 6:30 p.m. here in Council Chambers. The intent of this is to begin conversation about the City Council's budget priorities for the next fiscal year budget. Also, Legal Affairs will be meeting on March 20th at 6:30 p.m. That's before our next regular council meeting, and that's to take up some of the appointments that came before them this evening. Our next regular council meeting will be on March 20th at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers. And I also just wanted to wish Councilor St. Hilaire a happy birthday. Today is his birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. We got to spend a lot of time with you on your birthday. So
Quality time doing all that I love doing best.
any other announcements from councilors or reminders? With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 8-0. And thank you to BevCam. Thank you, Kim. We're adjourned.